except for the audience.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 21st meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of the exits around the room and now join us as we salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item is a continued public hearing for Justice Steakhouse. This application has been reviewed extensively. We're down to the near end. However, we're waiting on the applicant to provide new lighting as well as lumen plans for lights in the southern parking area. I will note that since the last meeting, Central Hudson has taken down the old security light that was there.
They unplugged it. It's kind of dangling,
yeah, it's a good way to put it. It's no longer electrified. However, if you go by, you can see that the lot would be too dark as it is right now with just undermount lights in the soffits. So we're waiting for the applicant to provide some information. Making a motion to reopen the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? I believe that one of the neighbors who mentioned lighting must be pleased by now at what's already transpired.
Mm-hmm.
As a reminder, we received a proposal from Mr. Wilson today. I sent it out to everyone if you had a chance to receive it. It looks like a security light as well. And if I saw the specs correctly, there was a narrow, medium, and wide beam throw. The medium would throw from 45 feet to 100. It's not that deep. So, and Mr. Sotero made comments. Would you like to repeat those for the record?
Well, one of the things is it's basically a floodlight that, you tilt. So, without, again, we just got it, today, so without looking at it, but, my first thought was that we could get into a glare issue, depending on where they are on the building for either cars traveling north on 9G or cars traveling north on Creek Road. So, just have to look at it. I mean, when you tilt it, you're going to see that bulb, that bright bulb, and so that was my first thought. But again, we just received it today,
Right.
This afternoon, late. So
What about light pollution? I mean, I would think the way it gets focused, does that add to the night pollution with the lighting shooting up?
I mean, I don't think so because it's still on a tilt to shine it down. It's just depending on how much you get, the tilt to get it out far enough. So I don't think we're worried about. I don't think they're that high of a, a wattage where it's going to go, higher up in the air, the sky.
Should we get from them just a light plan?
We have to.
So that,
Well, we've asked
we've been
now.
talking a lot about lights.
Well, we've
and
asked
types
now,
of what we're doing,
several.
And just get a fixed light plan so we
Yeah, I
have
mean,
something
we've asked.
to refer to when we're done.
That's correct. That's correct. And we've asked for that several times. And Liz had gone over the plans we received. I believe it was February 6th, maybe by email.
Plans which I will remind you, we haven't seen.
That's correct, because
Right.
there wasn't a formal submission. So, once they come in and if anything, has changes, we'll update, the memo. But right now, it's like in draft form unless you want us to send it out based upon what we got via email, or we just wait until.
I don't think it would make much sense for the rest of the board if we haven't seen the plans.
Probably not. So.
I also just enter in for the record that I did speak with Greg Bentley at New York State Department of Transportation. They have some concerns. I don't want to mention them all because some were a bit beyond what I think this application would involve. But he indicated that they would be sending us a memo, some kind of comments, and I emailed him more recently and have not heard anything back from when they intend to. We discussed at the agenda meeting with Ms. Polidoro, who has pointed out that we referred this back, I believe, Cynthia, in November to DOT, December to DOT, and the 30 days in which they have time has lapsed, so we could take action without their recommendations. We also did a courtesy referral because the project that we sent to them does not call for asphalt or paving in the rear parking, so I don't know what permit they'd be required to get from DOT that would enable them to make comments that were enforceable.
Yeah. The
So
only
they-
thing is, and I'm sure that Mr. Lockwood would make this change, but on the plans we received by email to address the concern of protecting the patrons that be in that outdoor patio area. They showed an area of several large, they showed a line of several large boulders to provide some like protection. Well, several of those were encroaching onto both the DOT right-of-way and into the town's right-of-way, so I don't think he's going to want to go to DOT to get a permit to put a boulder in the right-of-way, or us. So,
We'll make sure those are revised.
so that's going to be, that'll be in our comment letter if it's still on the updated set of plans.
Like the lighting, can we get more of a definitive, what he's going to do or a plan? Because he's talked about, putting rebar in the
Fence
posts for the
posts.
fence, but.
Right.
We have to.
I think.
Yeah, it needs to be
You
more
have to,
definitive.
but how much? 1 stick?
Yeah.
5 sticks?
Yep.
I think with what we've gone through on the lighting, with it's all kind of been bounced around in the air and really no definitions. I'm a
Yeah.
little concerned that right along there on that portion of Creek Road, right alongside there.
Yeah, and we've
The
been
patron
asking for
issue,
those too. Yeah, so we'll cover that.
Okay.
You can add that to your memo. Thank you. Anyone else from the board want to add anything? When would you like to adjourn this to 2 weeks, or knowing that the submission deadline for 2 weeks was today and we not receive anything, should we adjourn this for a month to the 21st of March?
I make a
Yes.
motion, we adjourn it till 21st.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next application, I want to thank one of our vice chairs, Ms. Dexter. She made the executive decision to cancel the meeting, the regularly scheduled meeting last time, and I want to thank the rest of the board. In my absence, you all met for almost a full meeting.
Yeah.
And took care of business, as well as you reset the public hearing for this particular application, so we'd have to start the whole process over again. As it turns out, it didn't do much with the application, but it still keeps us going, so.
And as long as we're thanking people, Miss Cynthia over there is a lifesaver, because she reached out to all of the applicants and let them know that everything was getting changed, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. We're going to shine that halo more over your head. The next application is Jeffrey Groves Estates. The applicants, this is the first time that we'll be workshopping the meeting. The application, they're seeking re-subdivision and site plan approval. As a reminder, this was approved many, many years ago. Mr. Kaufman has been before this board many times seeking extensions of the approval before they started construction. They've re-delineated the wetlands during that time period, just in case the wetland boundaries had migrated. And what they're essentially doing is converting 9 formerly approved single-family homes into 12 new townhomes.
You can use that.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Sure.
The townhomes, the townhomes will be more reflective of the approved townhomes to the west of it. And I believe that, sorry, it looks like it has a list. I believe that, in my personal opinion, I think this makes for a better project because it's going to be more cohesive rather than welding 9 single-family with the other townhomes that were previously approved. The architecture will reflect what's already been approved, as will the landscaping. Let me turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Good evening, members of the board and all the consultants. I'd like to just give a synopsis of what we're here about tonight, but I was just recalling that Tad Moss had actually provided an email, and I don't know if everybody was included on it, and I think that we might as well start there. And so what she had written back in January was that an application is being prepared relative to the subdivision and site plan approvals known as Jeffrey Groves Estates. The original approval was for townhomes on the western end of the development, a sewer treatment plant on a small parcel along North Cross Road, and single-family homes on the eastern end of the project. The townhomes and the sewer treatment plant required site plan approval. The single-family homes did not require site plan approval. The applicant is seeking a microphone and is seeking approval to reconfigure the single-family dwelling lots. That would have been 9 lots, that's 9 lots, and change an open space lot and create townhouses. This will require a re-subdivision of the single-family lots and site plan approval of the new townhouses project. These are 2 separate applications, and the resultant final drawings need to be a set of subdivision plans and a set of site plan drawings. And then also was a concern for the developers being allowed to obtain a CO for individual buildings as they are constructed and not knowing in advance which buildings will be constructed first. The code directs that no CO shall be issued until all improvements shown on a site plan are installed. One way we have addressed this has been through phasing, such as each townhouse building must have installed site plan elements that are on those lots, plus associated drainage improvements that are functioning. The last building to receive a CO is tied to completion of all elements shown on the site plan. The originally approved site plan for the townhouses was not phased, and a phasing plan will cover the entire project, so each building would be able to obtain a CO as construction progresses. The neg deck was done on the entire project. I believe an EAF is needed because some information is changing. The number of lots and dwelling units is increasing, although the disturbed area may be decreasing. I think the wetlands were recertified. This neg deck from 2013 is attached. I am not sure how the planner will advise filling out the EAF. There is always the option of a pre-application meeting, which we did have, and
just for the record, Mr. Kaufman, I did I did a memorandum after our meeting and put it into the file and sent it to the rest of the planning board, so they're familiar with what you're getting
okay,
ready.
great. So then I will, no need for me to go on, except that, there were some escrows that we posted, and here we are tonight. And so we filled out the applications apropos of the requests, and there was some certain information that was requested from the previous approvals, which I did provide.
You did?
And so without reiterating anything, I think, unless the board wants to ask me something, I might as well turn it over to our engineer.
Sure. Can you state your name for the record for us?
Brian Watts from MA Day Engineering, with Dennis Lynch as well from
Thank you.
MA Day.
All yours.
The land that's going to be re-subdivided is essentially all the land exclusive of the wastewater treatment plant parcel. That's going to remain unchanged. The lots to the east of the pre-approved townhouses, the open space lots, and the non-residential lots will be re-subdivided into 12 townhouse lots. The balance of the land that's not going to be in those new townhouse lots are going to be combined with the open space lots, 1 and open space lot 2. Open space lot 1 is between to the east of, to the west of Daniels Way, and open space lot 2 is to the east of Daniels Way. There is that pond there, that's going to remain, we're not touching that during construction. There's a couple easements there for, I believe it's a view shed easement for the neighbor, that's going to remain in place, we're going to plan on changing that. We would be dissolving any unnecessary easements. Those were inclusive of the common driveway and utility access easements. Those aren't required anymore with the exception of the pump station at the foot of Daniels Way. The Daniels Way itself is not changing at all. The right-of-way has already been dedicated to the town. The scope of that hammerhead, the construction, the utilities within it, we plan on remaining the same. The basin on the west side of Daniels Way will remain as well. That's for stormwater. The townhouses themselves will consist of 2 different units. Each will have 6 townhouse units in it. Duplex style, I believe. They will match what was already pre-approved. And in fact, all the elements we are proposing are to match what was already pre-approved. Landscaping, which we will provide in a future submission. Lighting will be provided in future submission, pending any comments from the board. The elevation, the design of the buildings will match. Sidewalk will be provided along Daniels Way on the west eastern side. Again, to mirror what was already approved. Everything within Blair's Way, which is the access for the pre-approved townhouses, none of that is changing. none of the utilities for that are changing either. The source for water will remain the same. Our intent is still obviously the wastewater treatment plant. The scale of the wastewater treatment plant has been changed just to reflect current technologies, and that's included in the site plan just because the building is going to shrink as well. Everything's going to be outside, it's going to be in the ground, you're not going to see it, and the building is, I think it's about less than half the size it was, and it's not as tall. But the driveway for that will remain the same.
And the lot, you know, the sewer treatment plant lot remains the
Uh-huh.
same and need not be part of any new subdivision.
The only reason, again, why we are including the previously approved townhouses in the site plan application is for the phasing, which Lou already went into a little bit. The total disturbance has gone down quite a bit. For the entire site, the parent parcel was a little over 25 acres, with the average density zoning that allows us 50 units, which is where we came up with 12 additional units, is down by a little over 25% reduction. The wetland disturbance, they're federal wetlands on site, we're going to cut that disturbance in half. That's because we no longer have to cross over that pond on the eastern side of the parcel, and we don't have those common driveways anymore. The impervious has gone down significantly. I believe everyone has seen the email. I sent a table. Again, so those, the impervious, it's in my notes here somewhere, but it's, total impervious is down almost 14%, and that's mostly because those driveways, the residential lots aren't there anymore. They were very long. All of the wetlands in the eastern portion are no longer to be disturbed. The
Let
only-
me interrupt for 1 second so that there's a little context. This was the original approval. In the original approval, you had the 2 streets, they're unchanged. And this was Blair Road, sorry. And that is essentially remaining the same, except that I don't believe we were aware of the requirement that you have to complete an entire, you know, whatever in that phase in order to get a CO. So that has changed now. So we are asking for, I believe, 9 phases, 1 for each building and 1 for the sewer treatment plant as requested, you know, as suggested by Tad and Liz and Pete, Mr. Sotero, and Liz Axelson, sorry, I shouldn't be that casual with
Please.
names. And
We're casual.
Anyhow, so...
The chairman's the only person who's not casual, so.
So that's the phasing. The phasing is because, so we would, of course, be compliant with the requirements of the town in that regard, so that obviously everything that you need to service the building, which of course is a sewer treatment plant and the sewer and the landscaping and all of those necessities in the infrastructure, that would be in place. And then
Sidewalks
the
included?
sidewalks,
Sidewalks included?
yes,
So you're
yes,
gonna do sidewalks, power
correct.
on
Okay.
the whole
And the
thing.
landscape.
Well, yeah, you know, so as an example, let's say we build the first building on Blair Road. And so whatever outside would service that, which would be sidewalks, road, the entire road. All of the water, sewer, all of that infrastructure would go in up front. And, you know, the sewer treatment plant, obviously, you have to have that work or
Is that gonna be?
can't hold it in that long, you know, and,
Phase 2 or not?
what?
Is that gonna be phased also,
So the
or?
sidewalks are part of phase 1.
Well, okay, the sidewalks are part of whatever building we intend to build. So phase 1 would be sidewalk, yes. So when we complete whatever,
We're building them out, the sidewalks will match the house.
correct. And then, so, but if we choose to, and we probably are choosing to build Blair Road first, well, then all of Blair Road would have to go in and wouldn't necessarily address Daniel's Way in. And if I build the two buildings on Daniel, or one building on Daniel Way, then of course Daniel's Way has to be completed before I would get a CO
Not to
on that
cut you
building.
short, but I should explain to you that the board already has familiarity with a similar kind of project.
Okay, great.
We had a failed 78 single-family home subdivision that model units were built, and then the economy collapsed and it was foreclosed. After many years, it took one of the creditors a while to take control of the entire site. It was re-subdivided and with site plan because it was turned into 25 two-family homes for a total of 50 dwelling units. Just like this, we required sidewalks, we did phasing. Every two-family unit is its own phase. There was much discussion, this is why Ms. Polidoro was asking you about sidewalks, because these will be, I think you mentioned at the last offline meeting, that these might be rentals. In the other instance, they're going to be built and sold. So we were discussing how to get sidewalks in at one time, which is why the board may have further discussion down the line about how to do the sidewalks. The issue is a little bit of a difference. That site has a clubhouse with a pool and an activity court, et cetera. So the question was how to get residents to be able to, who might buy in the rear, another one buy over here, other here, how they could walk safely to the clubhouse. In your case, this is a sidewalk just to kind of move laterally, so to speak, and to, I believe, to get letters, mail, stuff like that, and also for people, for guest parking to go to an event, whatever. So expect maybe some discussion about that, but I think what Ms. Polidoro, where she was going, was questioning whether you would just do one piece of a sidewalk each time, or if you would do an entire sidewalk system.
It's our intention to do the entire sidewalk, the entire roadway. I'm not going to do it piecemeal.
Thank you.
That's what we do.
What was one of the, I think you used the word site plan elements that would be done at the end. What would be an example of that? That you said after everything was complete, there may be some site plan elements, I think you said in your narrative.
I think not to put words into your mouth, but I believe what you were referring to is you'll be doing landscaping for each
Right.
unit that's proposed, lighting
Right.
for each unit that's proposed, all site plan elements.
Right.
If there are any remaining elements like landscaping around the mailbox or
Right.
something else, that would be the final act of completion.
Right. So, okay, so mailboxes. The mailboxes, we have a place for the mailboxes, and we've created another, rather than on the single-family homes, they were getting delivery to their home, so now we have a mailbox area that Brian has created for that portion. But by elements,
You're not talking about anything major, the red light just
no,
went
no,
on.
no, everything that, the major infrastructure, the major
Okay.
site improvements, they're going in for the first phase.
Okay.
That's what that is. What we are
each side.
not necessarily going to do is landscape every building until we ask for a CO on that building. So, and it would be easily, identifiable, and that's a building element, and that's a site plan element.
Rather than have a back and forth, let's wait until I can just call on each one of us to ask
Yeah.
questions. I'll also add that, similar to what we did with the enclave, I believe what we'll be able to do is conduct simultaneous review in terms of public hearings. We know that, or I hope that the board recalls, that there's a little bit of a difference in terms of seeker when you close out a public hearing for subdivision versus site plan, so we'll have to address that down the line. Again, the purpose of this was just to workshop it for the first night, and I think we can go to the consultants for questions, unless
I just wanted to point out, just so you, in case for the new members of the board, which, I don't see too many, but what we've eliminated is this was one lot, this was one lot, and then there were all of these lots. And so now, these two lots are now part of open space, and all of this is open space except for that portion that is the new townhouses. And with that, I will step away.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize, as Mr. Watts pointed out, that their overall disturbance is going down by 25%, and equally important, the Army Corps of Engineers wetland, the federal wetland, will also have less disturbance because of lack of crossing. So this will guide us, I believe, in our secret review. Without further ado, let me turn it over to the consultants. Ms. Axelson, comments?
First of all, I just have to say that the tables were very helpful because when you eyeball the plan, you can see that it's less disturbance, it's more compact. And so I was really pleased to see a compact design. You squeezed a few more units on here, but it's a good use of the facilities that you're creating, water and sewer-wise. So I was glad to see that. The tables were very helpful. I know that in the offline meeting, one of the things I suggested was a 5-foot wide sidewalk for the new road, and then we kind of went around in the conversation and came back and said, well, wait a minute, if it isn't built for the other road yet, let's consider 5-foot sidewalks for both.
And I
I'm-
did send a follow-up email to
Right.
the applicant saying that might come up.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to just go ahead and make the plug that it is going to make for a more marketable little neighborhood, because a 4-foot sidewalk's a little difficult for people to, you know, walk in opposite directions right next to each other. So why not make it nice? Really, those are the big areas. We're looking to fill in all the details. I can see what the plan is. We're looking to fill in the details, grading, et cetera, showing existing and proposed wooded lines to kind of fill in what's the whole landscaping concept, lighting plan, of course, maybe showing some protective fencing for certain areas like the wetland and the open space, et cetera. So our comments are a little lengthy, but they're really primarily to make a more complete plan set and get clear on some of the zoning and bulk things. And I think, again, those tables help to substantiate in the long run when you're going to be filling in your zoning bulk tables and making clarification on that. We did have some EAF comments that will need to be addressed, and we'll be finalizing these comments right after this meeting. Those are my main.
And I should add for the
Issues.
board that Mr. Watts had asked after the offline meeting whether he should make a new submission prior to our meeting, and we suggested that he wait to hear comments from the board, as well as to finalize comments from Morse Associates. So they will be revising and making the more complete application, like I said, landscaping, lighting, et cetera. But this is just to get the board going on the idea of what they're doing. Mr. Sotero, comments?
Just that I also think this is a much better project than the other one. It certainly doesn't disturb as much area. You know, from an engineering standpoint, my only two concerns were the existing pond and excavating for the buildings so close to the pond, and is there the chance of you're going to create either fissures in the soil, or if you encounter rock, is there the potential to drain the pond during the excavation for the buildings? But Lou did provide some information. He was working with a prior engineer who did go out and dig some deep hole tests in areas of where the proposed building would be, so we'll look at those. And then I think we should probably talk about thinking about some kind of protective fencing around you know, the pond. I'm sure there's gonna be kids around, and I just think we need to think about it, that's all. And then really, from an engineering standpoint, we'll just go through the normal things. I think you guys are going to update the stormwater pollution prevention plan, right, Brian, at some point? Right.
We can do that, yes.
So, yeah, so, but other than that, they have agency approvals. They're working with the County Water and Wastewater Authority on water and sewer, and the Dutchess County Department of Health, and so we'll get our letter out by the end of the week, but I don't think it's anything like major. It's just cleaning up things.
I kind of feel the same way about this application. So it's a little complicated in terms, just like the enclave, because it has to be a re-subdivision as well as site plan. But it's actually easier than the enclave because they already had a major portion of the project as part of site plan. And Mr. Kaufman, it's a quirk of our code. The reason why all the elements of site plan have to be completed before a CO is done is because the majority of site plan applications we receive are commercial. That's what it was kind of intended to do. It's only multifamily that requires site plan under our code, as well as two-family in certain areas, certain districts. So we can work with you, in other words, to make sure that the phasing works out. That's why Tad wrote the email in the first place. Mhm.
Just one quick thing, I think probably would work to pass some draft phasing notation back and forth before you plunk it onto the plan. It just might be an easier way to work that.
That's a great idea. I know that we put in extensive phasing notes.
Yeah, for the enclave, yeah.
Yeah, for the enclave.
Yeah, we're pretty good at it now.
That's what I was trying to tell you. We just went through a longer and more complicated experience with this. So, Ms. Polidoro, comments?
Yeah, I agree that we should take a closer look at phasing notes and make sure that it works before you put it on the plans. The other comment I have is that when we met on the offline meeting, we talked about you preparing an overlay map which shows the area that was studied, like for archaeology, the first time around the area of disturbance, and now your proposed new footprint of disturbance, just so we can show that it's the same area.
I was intended to include that with the next submission,
Right.
so there's no piecemeal, anything lost in transmission between anybody.
Thank
nothing
you.
Held up.
We've had lots of piecemeal submissions lately. Thank you.
Right, we're just, at this point, the board doesn't have enough information to either reaffirm the prior secret determination from 2007 or to make a new secret determination, so we're just waiting on a little more information.
Well put. Let me start to my right. Ms. DiNapoli, comments?
Just a few questions. The 5-foot sidewalks, I would second the suggestion that they be strongly considered. This is going to be multi-age community, I would assume. So you have the elderly with walkers and wheelchairs, and you have young families with carriages and strollers, so that extra foot wide would make it much more enjoyable for them to go out and partake by the use of using those sidewalks. The driveways, I know you said you'd made them shorter. Are there going to be garages, or is it just driveways for the townhouses?
Yeah.
Anyone know?
That's interesting.
I
The
mean,
driveways that are shortened, so to speak,
Right.
they're basically eliminated. It's the same driveways that existed for the townhouses before. And I must admit, I'm embarrassed
That's okay.
about. oh
You have
my goodness.
garages.
That's
You
why
have
I always
garages.
carry
Thank you,
everything.
thank you. Wow.
Because if you're 6
Can we
units,
take
I'm
that
trying-
one out of the tape?
I was just trying to.
You should
figure
crumple
out-
paper when you don't want to.
I was just trying to figure out where all of these cars are going and how are they being accounted for.
Some of the driveways are a bit longer on like the northern block, if you will. They can accommodate multiple cars, and we're going to provide, I think I show 6 additional parking spaces off of the Daniels Way, which mirror the other side, so that would be additional parking that would be off-street.
So those additional 6, is that for the residents who are living there? Or is that for, I'm coming to come visit you there?
Guests.
And I need guests.
Whomever.
Grandparents and children.
If I recall, when this was first approved, Ann and I and Chan were all still, were here from way back when. The garage is a single car, and there is room for a car behind it for 2 cars. And then you are allowed on-street parking during various months of the year, plus they provided guest parking for when people want to come visit. If they have to use it, there may be people just pulling up in front of that townhouse, et cetera. Again, there's not a clubhouse associated with this, or a party room, or anything like that, so the other site plans we've had, where we've had this kind of clustered townhome development, have all had some sort of area where you could host a party, so we've had more extensive guest parking because of that.
Snow removal. Is that, and forgive me, it might be my own missing of it. Has that been accounted for on the plans? Where are you putting the snow removal?
I can add that to the plan where it would end up.
And my last comment is really courtesy of our chairperson, who on our agenda meeting had suggested on the idea of zigzagging the buildings.
Actually, that was Ms. Axelson.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I must give credit where credit is due.
And I think the idea was to do it every 2 units or something.
We will offset, I did it on the southern proposed block. They're offset a little bit. I'll show it on the northern as well, a
It's
couple of feet.
Sort
We
of
can
reflect,
offset
if you look
the
what's here,
units so that
these
you
units
can-
are offset. And what we've learned from talking to realtors is that generally people who rent or buy prefer to have the offset here and there. It gives them a little bit more sense of privacy than to have the flat uniform front.
So what we have is 6 units, every 2 will be offset.
Right.
And that will match what was on the other side approved, so everything will look cohesive and like it was planned that way from the beginning.
Thank you.
And by the way, for snow removal, snow storage is what I think Mr. Watts was referring to. These will be town roads, so they'll be cleared, the roads will be cleared by our highway department. However,
We may need easements for snow storage if we don't have them.
that's what I was just going to say. I don't know that we have easements for snow storage. And with sidewalks, we discussed with Mr. Kaufman in the offline meeting. There's normally an HOA formed if there's an ownership like this to take care of common elements for maintenance, such as the sidewalks, landscaping, mowing, et cetera. That was what was intended. They have the prospectus, I believe, to file with the Attorney General's office. So we'll work through that as we go down the line.
Actually did file that with the Attorney General's office, but, we didn't seek an approval of it. So they have it on record, and actually, Mr. Rodenhausen had reviewed it back in the dark ages. And so it's there, the HOA exists, and, we're not selling them individually, but
Right.
we will,
If this, in other
whatever
words,
is the.
if the HOA comes into action, they would be the sole owners, the applicant would be the sole owners of, they'd be an HOA of 1, and they would still handle the maintenance of all the site. Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver?
I appreciate the reduction in the overall disturbed areas, and I think this makes a much more marketable project. I think it'll sell a lot better. I'm excited to see, more details on the plans, and I would also like to see the 5-foot sidewalk.
Thank you. Ms. Dexter?
I will echo the overall betterness of this plan, and I also would like to see 5-foot sidewalks over on Blair Road, since you're going to be putting them on Daniels Way. I think Ms. DiNapoli has pretty much listed all the reasons why it's a good thing to do. Once the weather gets better, might be good to do a site walk.
I'd love to.
Absolutely.
It's been a really long time.
We missed our site walk weather today. So.
Yeah, true. But just to keep that in mind once it,
Down the road.
yeah.
I'll just schedule one by email with Mr. Kaufman? Okay. We generally try to walk on weekends because many of the individuals up here work. And with it getting dark early, we'd probably try to do this on a weekend if that's okay. Thank you. Anything else? No? Mr. Pickett?
Put another check down for the 5-foot sidewalk.
I think we've heard a majority now.
Yeah. And my question is mostly just understanding of the phasing, and I know you have more information coming on that, but it sounds like what you're going to do is start off with Blair Road. And then, but when you put in Blair Road, you put in electrical, water, sewer.
Correct.
All that goes in, and
Right.
then you get a CO on each individual. That'd be
Correct.
the phase 1 versus, and then you go over to Daniels Way and do the same thing over there. Okay.
That's correct.
That was just the question.
Yeah, they would
So
have
you put
to-
in all the sub stuff.
They'd have to lay in all the lines
We
for
wouldn't
water and
issue,
sewer.
we wouldn't issue any building permits until everything is in, the infrastructure is in pretty much up to the final top coat of asphalt. I mean, that could, stay off until they get the, most of, the units built. But, we got to have the infrastructure in so that, when people pull their building
So you're not
permits,
digging it up, tearing it down,
the next
digging
thing
it
they
up.
have the opportunity to get a certificate of occupancy. So everything's got to be, there and in place, so. And those are part of, the notes that'll be on the map that'll kind of coincide with the phasing notes, just to make sure that that's absolutely clear.
The other thing that we're going to talk about is a blanket easement, because I know that you intend to build all these, but there have been situations in the past where a project doesn't get built, and then the tax lots are individually sold, and because these all touch, they can't really be built without going on the other lot. And so the planning board will just need to make sure that there's, in the event that you do not build this project and they go up for sale at a tax auction or they're somehow sold, that whoever buys them will have the ability to actually construct houses on them. So just, a blanket easement allowing every lot to cross the other lot for construction purposes.
This is what I was also faced with the enclave, because they were doing it in phases. Some of the sections required extensive grading, and so the concern was that if they got to a point and stopped and then the project was sold, they weren't going to grade the whole thing out because it's a lot of units. So there has to be some kind of mechanism so that what we approve can actually be constructed later on, and that this is even a tighter design, more compact than the enclave was. So Ms. Polidoro has copies of, I think, the language or draft language we can provide for you if you'd like to look at it.
Appreciate
I know
it.
you're an attorney yourself, so you know what we're talking about.
Oh, I know it off the top of my head.
Thank you, Mr. Piggott. Mr. Murphy?
It's been a long process, a lot of years, though. I'm in favor of the new plan. I think it's an improvement, and my concerns about the phasing have been answered, so I'm fine.
Thank you. Ms. Weiser?
And my only comments were to encourage you to think about the 5-foot sidewalks.
To change.
And it's unanimous.
You're right, because I'm going to add mine to it as well. I don't really have any comments, if you can believe that. I want to echo my colleagues. I do think this is a much better layout, a better plan in every way. I've said this all along. I've had the good fortune to meet with Mr. Kaufman and his partner. I think we first discussed this 3 years ago. It's exciting to see that the market is changing enough that you're interested in investing in our community finally on this project. They've also been going back and forth with the Water and Wastewater Authority over the particular wastewater treatment plant that's been proposed. I think you've neared the end, so that's why you're moving forward now. You have a plan that they'll accept and approve. So I think what we'll do is just, we can kind of placehold a spot. Do you know how long it'll take you to get a revised plan submitted?
When's the earliest I can submit it?
Any day.
For the next.
Oh, well, that was today. It would be for the very next meeting, yes. Yesterday, sorry.
Yesterday.
So,
I will, we'll get some comments out probably tomorrow or like Friday.
in other words, whenever you submit, the submittal date is 2 weeks prior to the meeting. So,
We
if
will
you,
definitely try to get everything as soon as we can back before the board in time. We want to move this forward as
yeah,
quickly as
the
we
next
can.
meeting would be March 7th, so if you submit on the 6th or the 7th, you're kind of in process already. But because it's going to be a truly complete application, we do need the time. So the way, at least this chairman manages the agenda, is if you're kind of further down the pike, where we've already been reviewing a lot of stuff, and it's just sort of smaller things that we're looking at, then you can submit within a few days of the meeting. But for us to review the whole thing, we do need the full 2 weeks, if that makes sense to you.
I mean,
That's-
personally, I'd rather see you take a little more time and make sure that it's
Yeah,
really complete, because I don't think that this planning board process is going to be, your driver. I think that your driver is getting through the Water and Wastewater Authority and water and sewer like approval. So my guess is that we'll be done with the planning board process and a conditional before you're through with water and wastewater. So I'd rather, I know you want to try to make the next meeting, but if we can just be a little bit more complete for the meeting after that, I think, personally, I think that that'll be better.
and I agree with you. You, of course, won't know how we vote until we vote, but I think you all heard everyone say it's a better plan. That should give you some guidance as we go forward. And the more complete the application, the better and quicker the process will go after that. I also think that Ms. Polidoro's comments, as well as Ms. Axelson's, to start sharing maybe some draft phasing notes. You could take a look at the ones that we had. They're pretty extensive that we had for the Enclave if you want. I believe we have those in PDF. I'm sure Victoria has them. So I think Liz. So if you'd like for them to send them over, we can. They said yes, so we can send them
And
over.
we'll work with you guys, like outside of a meeting and, comments, we can have office meetings, we'll work everything out.
Thank you.
And I would say, the construction sequence and the phasing notes should, dovetail. So
Correct.
go back and forth.
We learned that on the Enclave as well, that's right.
Yeah.
So at any rate, so then we'll wait to hear from you.
So we should thank the Enclave for all
Yes.
this education and benefiting by their
In
mistakes.
a way, you
eh?
should. It's because, again, conceptually, it was very easy for the board to digest and go through, but there were a lot of hurdles to jump through because, just like you, there were re-subdivisions of lines, there were easements, and we hadn't at first, initially, we thought, oh, this will be a snap. We didn't realize you had to dissolve. There are so many easements that need to be dissolved because there weren't access portions through them anymore. So
Right.
this is, again, this is like a little mini version of the Enclave, so to speak. So,
Enclavette.
anyway, it's a pleasure to see you, and as soon as you just alert Ms. Whitman, and we can go ahead and schedule up for whatever meeting is appropriate based on the date of your submission.
So we will get ready with our revisions. We'll wait for the comments, see if we can't respond to them in the best way we can.
Yeah,
And I thank you all because my experience has been very helpful here, so.
Go out and
appreciate
tell that to other project
Well,
developers.
I will put that in the Poughkeepsie Journal if you'd like. No, that
Thank you.
is my experience here, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. We'll see you, I hope, in a month. The next item on the agenda is Hyde Park Town Center North, Buildings 3, 4, and 5. A note to the board, I sent a quick memo out. I apologize for not getting it out earlier. That's the problem with being away for 12 days. Everything piles up when you get back. So it's been a series of meetings, but in this instance, as I put in the memo, and we have a member of maybe the future tenant representative is here tonight. So in essence, as I pointed out in the memo, in the file memo, we had an offline meeting with Mr. Alexander, Ms. Leibold, and Mr. DeGraw of the architecture firm. In it, it was a wonderful meeting. Ms. Weiser and Ms. DiNapoli were with me, and we essentially took the architect, we spoke about the need to change the building where Feeds Plus is, and the fact that all the buildings look too rural, too barny. It looks as though they needed, goats out there and chickens with it. I can safely say.
Buffaloes.
Bison, yeah.
Bison, sorry.
I can safely say that he got it really quickly. It was 3 minutes of talking. Yeah, and he said, oh, I think I know what you want. I know what you mean. So also, as I put in the memo, he was the principal architect who designed Warwick Grove, which, if you haven't seen, is a wonderful traditional neighborhood TND design neighborhood. We're going to try to set up a meeting to go with Mr. DeGraw for everyone to see it, if whoever is interested. So they're working on revisions to the building. We also discussed the building that's closest to Pine Woods. Our code, as you know, requires that anything longer than 100 feet requires articulation, which they don't have. So he was going to work up maybe somehow to change it. We thought maybe there was a way to do an overhang for like a covered port or sidewalk
Pavilion?
there. But it's not really, the roof slope is so low that he thought it wouldn't be a good idea. So having met him now and having heard what we think the board would like to see, I think that I hope the next iteration will be something that will make everyone happy and ready to go architecturally wise. We also discussed with Ms. Leibold that the landscaping as submitted did not have any landscaping for the emergency 1 building, I'll call it, since it's labeled that way. We also discussed the emergency 1 building, and everyone agreed, more or less present, which is not a majority of the board, that building was fine as it is and ready to go. So we'll be looking to see the next submission. I did tell Ms. Leibold and Mr. Alexander that we would be typing the action and circulating for seeker purposes tonight, so therefore they didn't have to come, because I'd rather them answer questions when we have a more complete application. The application being somewhat incomplete is not ready to go to county planning either. which they acknowledged. And in the meantime, we received a late submission from Mr. Alexander, like after the office had closed, and probably none of you have seen it. But in essence, we also discussed the issue of scale. As you know, Ms. Polidor, let me turn it over to you to discuss that real quickly.
So the site as it exists is now in compliance with scale. But part of this project includes the former Masuda parcel, which is the small shopping center adjacent to the town center plaza. And it turns out that that parcel was created by deed after the adoption of zoning and subdivision laws, but without any approvals from the planning board. So it was basically invalidly created without ever complying with the zoning law. And so they're proposing to merge the lots back together. And in this case, even though that would cause the total cumulative scale to be in excess of what's permitted, because it's a pre-existing condition and it's bringing the lots back into compliance, Ms. Moss has decided that that is appropriate and no variances are needed.
Nor special use permit for an expansion. They could then apply under the terms in the future for an expansion of a non-conforming scale, which this exceeds 65,000 square feet, which is what is allowed in the district.
In essence, it's unique, and they're fixing a problem that was created that violated the zoning law back in the 50s. So.
Yeah, and I had the fun opportunity of going through our original subdivision law. Just as a note for everyone, I did find the section that Tad is telling me about that says that four-corner intersections shall be avoided, which is why we don't have any four-corner intersections in town. Hello? Talk about planning. At any rate, so this, again, that lot that was created by deed, we would not be able to create it. It doesn't have legal access to sewer, it doesn't have legal access to water, and it has no way for vehicles to get to the parking. There are no easements that exist to go through another parcel to it, so.
It never would have been permitted.
No. So why it was done and how it was done, we're not certain. I was told that it was done by judge, but who knows? At any rate, we'll be able to move forward with this project, and they should be submitting, again, we don't have a site plan, a public hearing set yet, so we should be able to start a real thorough review once we have a new set of plans, and a complete set of plans, and that will include no elevations for, I believe that the building closest to Pine Woods will change in a minor fashion. It didn't look that rural, but the one where Feeds Plus is that had the fake barn doors, we suggested that he make that look more like a traditional village streetscape building, and Ms. Weiser showed examples, so did Ms. DiNapoli. So, Ms. Dexter, comments?
My head is spinning because I'm still trying to, so we're talking about, when you said the lot adjacent, do you actually mean the Verizon
Yes.
barber shop lot
Yes.
that's actually like in that lot? Okay,
Right,
because
so
I'm
that-
trying to think which
right now-
lot is adjacent.
Right now, the lot that has Verizon and the barber shop is a standalone lot.
Right,
Even though
and
it doesn't
so-
have its own
so we were-
parking, access, water, or sewer.
No, I understand that.
Yes.
So I thought that was as a result of the lawsuit and the judge basically drawing a little box around that.
That's what the rumor is. The applicants don't have any evidence of that, but we do know that the lot was created after zoning and subdivision without zoning and subdivision approval.
Okay, so that's what all these older documents are showing, so.
Yes, they're showing that the lot never would have been approved, and it was never a valid action. I mean, technically, Ms. Moss could bring an action against the owner of the lot right now for it
But he's
being
trying to
out of
remedy.
compliance.
Yes.
He's trying to remedy.
So this will remedy it. And
Okay,
therefore,
okay.
no variances are needed because we're fixing a problem, even though it will bring the total scale
Legitimizing
out
the
of
problem.
compliance.
Even the volume issue with adding.
They still are going to need a variance for volume because that is something they are doing themselves to increase the
They're
volume of the
introducing
building.
that.
Yes.
And what about if any of the buildings do end up being removed as part of being put back up?
So I've spoken to the applicants about that. Should any of the buildings be removed, they will not be able to be put back up without coming back before this board and the zoning board.
Then
Or-
they
or
would
just this
require
board,
a
depending on
variance
the
for
size.
that. right? Because
They
then,
could.
as soon as you take down a building, it reduces the scale that's
Correct.
there.
Everything's being treated as pre-existing non-conforming. So
Okay.
if anything comes down, they are aware that they lose the benefit of that grandfathering provision, and that therefore they have to start fresh.
Wow.
The Grand Union
That's a
fall
whole
down.
lot there.
It's a whole lot. I mean, it's a unique
Force the
site.
Grand Union to
and-
fall down.
And they understand that the buildings, I think everyone acknowledges that the layout is not ideal. I mean, the town reserves the right to get smarter about planning, and if you were starting the site now from
Oh,
scratch, I'm sure it would
right,
look very
it'd be
different.
completely different.
So, you know, they're getting the benefit of redoing existing buildings, but should those buildings come down, then it's time to bring them
Okay.
into compliance.
All right, so they are aware of that. Okay.
Yes, and,
Um,
go ahead.
Because then the other thing, Chairman, and I read your memo, is that both those buildings, buildings 3 and 4, are made of stone. I don't know if any of that was discussed, because when you look, that's actual stone for those buildings.
I raised that issue, and I was advised that it was not structural and that it was only a veneer.
Really? Boy, that's when they really knew how to make veneer.
It's a thick veneer.
Wow.
I did raise
Yeah,
the
no, I-
issue in the same discussion as the
I
buildings
saw- I
cannot
saw
come
it.
down.
The architect said that it was just a veneer.
I thought it was.
Okay.
That surprised us too,
Yes.
believe me.
Okay.
But,
Because the other thing with the Feeds Plus building is that it also has that steel beam that connects it to the Amish, the former Amish
That's
market.
also coming down.
How, wait a second, so
Yeah.
that,
I got the sense when the question was asked that that was not a structural, it was purely for the
The roof.
benefit of the roof. So that, because I had asked, like, does it go into the old Grand Union? And they said, no, that was coming down.
interesting.
We
Wow.
await the new plans with bated breath.
Yes. Wow,
How
thank
does
you,
all
everybody,
this
thank you,
affect the
everybody,
old
though,
Grand
that's,
Union? Can't they take it? can they
we
tear it
also,
down or
we,
not?
Well,
That's
if they
good
take it
news.
down, there's penalty.
If they take it down,
There's a severe penalty to taking it down now.
Right.
well, not a severe penalty, but they would go below scale, therefore they'd need variances to go above instead of a special use permit to the planning board. That's the difference.
and they're not proposing to take it down as part of this site.
Yeah, right.
In addition, the architect stated on the record for us that Mavis, the building, had structural instability for how high, they needed to add the roof line so high, remember, because they do the tire storage. For this, the buildings are structurally sound enough that they shouldn't have to replace the footings or any of that, because all they're doing is going from a certain peak to a slightly different peak.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why. And the cubic volume will just be the front building that we're going to keep calling Emergency 1 building because it's been labeled as such. And while I'm at it, the Zoning Board of Appeals will be looking for a recommendation for the area variance. Would you like me to compose a letter for the next meeting in favor of the area variance? Again, as we mentioned this before, we believe that the reason why the cubic volume of 60,000 cubic feet is in the first place is so that if something is adjacent to an historic site, it doesn't dominate or overwhelm it. In this instance, there are many intervening buildings between the former Masuda building to the Berg-Stoutenberg house. So I don't think it can dominate it. For that matter, it's pretty far away, and it doesn't seem to be a very dominating building to me in the first place. As I have been going up Cromwald and see the new Mavis, I keep realizing that the gables, now that you can see above the Masuda building, there'll be a visual, or maybe a foreshadowing, a premonition. Once the
Oh, cool.
Emergency 1 building comes up, because of the gable end walls, the way they're structured, they're going to be kind of parallel to that, but a little bit shorter, of course, than the Mavis building behind it. So,
Okay.
is everyone in favor of making a favorable recommendation
Yes.
to the ZBA?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure, yes.
That'll speed the process up.
And then I just had one more thing that I caught in the memo here.
This is Neil's memo?
Yes.
Let me-
In the second paragraph, he says, although the retail general commercial tenants for Building 3 are not known at this time, that would indicate to me that Feeds Plus is moving.
It does sound that way, but
I think they're just going to take part of the
'Cause-
building.
Well, no, I think they're alluding to something they had mentioned earlier, that they would be relocating that business.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Please plus.
What business?
They want to swap it out with one of the other businesses that's moving.
Oh.
Someone had mentioned months ago that they would,
Relocate to Town Center South?
yes,
Is that what you mean?
yes.
Well, that's,
I mean, I just.
this is
In
for,
in the former, what, soon-to-be former vet area.
oh.
That's what I'm
Sorry.
reading here, is that
Free parking.
that they might be moving them.
Okay. Well, that would be between the owner and the tenant, of course.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a legal issue.
No.
So in the meantime, any other discussion from the consultants or the board? Any questions?
No, thank you so much, though, for all that explanation. My
Well,
head.
we, as I said, we took the architect to the Wallace Center, and man, was he happy to see it. Because, we'll just say,
Beautiful site.
he liked the idea that this board in particular was saying, we also approve of more modern-looking structures if you can bring in those Hyde Park elements, like this one does, you know, the stone, the wood, the glass, the glazing. So we're prepared, we have a resolution prepared tonight to type and refer the action. Who has this? Thank you, Ms. Weiser.
Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, resolution classifying the action and declaring intent to serve as lead agency in a coordinated city core review, Hyde Park Town Center North, buildings 3, 4, and 5, February 21st, 2018, resolution number 16-15D. Whereas, now therefore be resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the project as a type 1 action, and 2, declares its intent to serve as lead agency in a coordinated review of the project and directs the secretary to circulate notice of its intent to all involved and interested agencies.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. I'm going to schedule a 5-minute break, just so some of us can get some water up here, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Pete, this is taking time off, Pete, you know?
Oh,
Extra time.
Yeah.
this is like awesome. Jeez. Yeah, this is the final one. This is 65. I'm not going to steal your pen.
What's so weird about this? And rent is always paid into, all the rent is paid to one Hyde Park shopping center.
Okay. They went.
Yeah, they went. That's just different.
Thank you. Thank you. So if I smell like a tractor, you know why? How you been doing?
Good.
Good.
How are you? Good.
Yeah. Every day.
Every day, every day.
I think it's every time I hear something.
Yeah. I think they're zeroing in on Kushner.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how,
Did they yank you?
and I know they're fighting about it. They haven't yanked it yet.
And I don't know the family, just kick yourself.
I know, in India. It was just like this awful, awful, awful people. I thought we were live.
So anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think so, pal. We're not safe.
I know that there are a few things planned for the students. I'm trying to think which. March 24th, and March 24th, April 20th, and I think sooner also, I'm not really sure. Three things. Where the students are.
You know how it takes the point, use the big movies or whatever,
Yeah.
kicked it, you know, that, and I think what happened.
Yes.
Hopefully this is the, and now they're starting to talk about, okay, let's do this Sunday.
No, I'm good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is Salt Point Solar. This is a new application. The applicants are seeking approval to install a solar farm. This will be site plan review as well as special use permit. Location is 525 Salt Point Turnpike. This is actually located at a kind of confluence of areas. This is on both East Dorsey, it hits on Cream Street as well as Salt Point Turnpike. And congratulations, you're the first project of its type to come through based on the new law. Just please state your name for the records and turn it over to you.
Chairman Dupree and the board, my name is Brian Stump. I'm a zoning manager. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Chairman Dupree and the board, my name is Brian Stump. I'm a zoning manager for Cypress Creek Renewables. I'll be speaking on behalf of Salt Point Solar LLC. And with me also is John Spinella from Spinella Engineering to discuss any kind of site plan questions you might have. But first I'll be introducing you to Cypress Creek and then the project and then going into details about the project and our application. So first of all, Cypress Creek Renewables is a long-term owner-operator of solar farms all across the United States. We're in 15 states, and we just got over 1 gig, more than 1,000 megawatts total in operating solar across the country. And in New York State, our main priority is what we call community solar, and that's in 2 megawatt range, and that would be enough to power 300 to 500 homes. In New York State right now, we don't have any solar farms operating, but we've had 16 applications approved, and probably closest to here would be the Bluestone Solar Project in Kingston. Now, for the Salt Point LLC, located, as the chairman said, at 525 Salt Point Turnpike, it's located on a 40.7 acre parcel. And what we'll be able to do is take something in the range of 26 area disturbance. We'll be able to just kind of occupy that area and put something in the range of 8 to 10 acres of solar array within that area of disturbance. And the reason we kind of have a larger area of disturbance outside of the array is for what we call a shading buffer, because at Cypress Creek, we have a goal of actually making the project virtually undetectable. We usually find areas where there is a lot of vegetative buffering, lots of trees that will actually conceal the project while still giving people, the township, 300 to 500 homes solar power. And so that's the general kind of logistics of the project. A few things about how we have our farm. Typically, the solar panels reach a maximum height of 12 feet, and they're oriented 30 degrees towards south. And the shading buffers are on the east and the west, and a little bit on the south, obviously, because we want to catch as much sun as it comes up and then goes down, and also it's oriented towards the south. Also, we have a 7.5 foot perimeter fence all the way around the project. And typically everything is underground. All the cables are underground until we get to the interconnection point. And typically at that point there are either 5 to 6 overhead poles. 3 are required by the utility, a net metering pole and a recloser pole. And also we have our own poles, which is our own net metering, our own recloser, and also we make sure we have a overhead pole that has a GOAB switch for any of the local utilities or local emergency crews, fire departments. They have an opportunity to shut that project off right at the interconnection point if they choose to. I've already spoken to a local fire department representative tonight, and I know it's the Roosevelt Fire Department. And actually, in my role, my zoning team consists of 4 people. We're all located in New York State. Of the 4, I'm the token volunteer firefighter, and so in that role, I tend to speak to the local fire departments and go over the emergency response plan and also the site plan to make sure they're comfortable and understanding everything about the project. At that point, I think right now we're in application review. We submitted in December, and we're going back and forth with comments on the application. And so, I mean, I'm open to questions or anything from the board.
As you've seen, I'll go by and call individually on the board members for questions.
Sure.
It makes it go much faster. Before I joined, people would just fire out questions and they wouldn't hear each other. Believe me, it was repetitive, et cetera. So I promise it's a better way. Any other thing you'd like to add?
No, I'll just, well, I mean, with our role here tonight, as I said, it's introductory of the project, and I believe at this point, the board is in a position to, if they chose to, declare intent to be lead agency. So just pointing that out, that's something that I believe the board is in a position to do tonight.
Let me start with our consultant. First, I want to say thank you it's a very detailed application. I'm going to let Ms. Axelson take the lead here at the moment, but just the first thing that I noticed was that there are some inconsistencies in the EAF. There are different references to the size of parcel, and I'll let Liz go into detail, like I said, but because it would take me too long to enumerate all of them, but I'm gathering that what might have happened was that first you didn't realize that one parcel was not zoned Greenbelt.
That is correct, yes. So right now, we originally were looking at 2 parcels, and then when we realized that we had one parcel that was not
neighborhood.
Yeah, it was. So we moved all the solar array, all the project into the zone Greenbelt, and so that way we avoided just having to do any kind of rezoning or anything like that. So yeah, we definitely will still be able to do 2 megawatts within that Greenbelt parcel.
Okay, Ms. Axelson, comments?
So we did do pretty detailed comments, and you know, I think conceptually there weren't any big issues. I think the one conceptual thing we're looking for is to make sure that we're really having a nice buffer all the way around. And the issue with the parcel to the south, it's in, is it neighborhood? Neighborhood commercial. I was just kind of looking at the numbers and thought, well, maybe you needed that parcel to be part of your overall site, even though you couldn't put solar panels there to make the numbers work in terms of coverage. And I think what you'll see through the review letter is that we'll need more clarity because the solar law does ask that the surface of your solar panels count as impervious cover. So we'll need you to break out those numbers so that it demonstrates that you're in compliance with that. And I did mention to the zoning administrator, Tad Moss, about the business of being able to have the southern parcel still as part of the project parcel, but the problem is that we would need to have some kind of restrictions on that parcel to prevent any other coverage on that. In other words, the parcel would become more or less unusable, I guess. So anyway, so extensive landscaping comments. We had some A number of comments on the EAF form, so we'll need some more clarification. So I would suggest to the board that I would rather have a lot of these questions answered before you consider readiness to declare your intent for lead agency. Let's see. Again, all the issues with the parcel lead into scheduled bulk regulations, questions and clarity that we need. And then, let's see, I notice you do have rocky soils. So some rock removal notes would be helpful. And let's see, then we get a little bit technical. I don't want to touch on too many things. We weren't very clear on what you had for signs, and I know you do need some warning signs, so we need to, have you show the location of those and the details on those.
Would you like us to provide examples of those signs? 'Cause,
Yeah, and actually show us where they're going to be on the site.
Okay, sure.
And
Your
let's
narrative
see.
describes all the signs you need, but
Right.
you can get signs, it's two ways under our code, with a sign permit or as part of your site plan approval. It's easier to do it as part of your site plan approval in your case.
Okay.
And then we had questions about lighting. I know you won't need a lot of lighting, but you might need some for whoever is coming in to check the site to have access. So if you can clarify those sorts of things.
Yeah, typically we don't have any sighting at all in the project area because no one typically needs to go there at night, especially because there's no electricity being generated. But just I also want to point out that there are people that do go onto the site during daylight hours, and we will hire a local for maintenance to keep the grass kind of at a minimum level. Also, we'll hire a local for snow removal during winter months because we want to make sure there's always access to any vehicles into the project area. But besides those, there also will be just a regular maintenance checkup. Individual from Cypress Creek will be there, probably just more like every 3 months at most.
I think that's in your narrative as well.
Yeah.
Pretty minor. And then you'll need a stormwater pollution prevention plan, a SWIP.
Okay.
Because I think you're up to 10 acres of disturbance.
Okay. I think there's one. Is there one in the application, or I thought there was?
There was, and we haven't finished. I'm sorry. Let me go back.
It's in there.
We didn't do a full review yet of the SWIP because of the questions that we had about the site area.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that's really all I
Did the
have.
applicants receive this memo?
Yes.
I thought
Think
so.
so.
Okay. I thought so.
Did you
Just
get
wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Yes, I thought so.
Please.
Thank you. Mr. Sotero?
No comment.
Because she covered them for you. Ms. Polidoro?
So there was some confusion about the area of the lots that you were using. And I understand now that you were intending to use both lots. So before the board goes ahead and circulates for lead agency under seeker, I think you guys should decide whether you will be asking for rezoning for that other lot or whether it's going to be left out of the application. Because that would be another action, and we would want to include the town board as part of that seeker circulation. And I know the environmental review, you probably do this in a lot of states, it's different in every state. In this state, we would need to include the town board from the get-go if they were going to be involved in the
And I should add, Mr. Baxter contacted me today.
We're working on that.
Yeah, he would like to proceed with the rezoning request. I did meet with the supervisor already, and I don't want to put words into her mouth, but she generally saw value, and she's just one person out of the town board, but she saw value in it. I explained to Mr. Baxter that if you already had plans that showed the array on both parcels, we could start the review on that design array while they're doing, in other words, it wouldn't slow you down necessarily because we could start our process up as they started the process of rezoning. But again, that's up to you and the owner and how your contract is, et cetera. I just wanted to point that out because he'd call me and he does a lot of business here, so I always return his calls. So.
Right. Well, you need to decide before you move forward, because if you make a switch halfway through, that is going to cause delay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's understandable.
The other thing is, I think Ted Moss advised you about setbacks around some of the water bodies.
100-foot buffer from the streams, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then for the board should consider whether they've submitted enough substantive information on seeker or whether additional studies are needed.
Just to,
Oh,
go
I
ahead.
was just going to point out that in another community that I work in, instead of having grass underneath the panels, they did require them to plant a native wildflower mix that was mowed twice a year. Fall
To
and
attract
spring,
pollinators.
To attract pollinators.
It's a good idea. I think I sent that article out to
Yeah.
everyone. It was covered.
And that's something that's something we actually do is we try to find locations for pollinators for bees. And I actually wear a hat as a beekeeper myself, so I'm trying to encourage more beekeeping, more bee facilities on the project areas.
Apiary.
Apiarist.
There we go. Congratulations. One thing I'd like to just point out to everybody to remember that the back parcel that's zoned neighborhood, I can't really see a lot of housing going there. I've walked the site before. It actually has nice views if you look north and west. But as soon as you look east, you'll be looking down on the construction equipment of Gleason Construction, which is a very large site there. So I think that might, if you do choose to pursue a rezoning, that probably would weigh in favor of the rezoning, simply since they're contiguous or adjacent parcels. And in terms of seeker, I think we were not prepared to take action tonight, but once we get some clarification, put it in the EAF with Ms. Eccleston's memos, I think we will be.
Okay.
Let me start to my left. Ms. Weiser, comments?
So very excited about this project.
Oh, thank you.
So my only comment is that I am most interested in seeing your responses to Ms. Axelson's memo. So that's really what I'm looking forward to in the next days.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
You gave me a lot more information than I could cover, but, and I don't know whether this was in it and I missed it. What's the life expectancy of these panels?
It's a good question. Our lease goes for 25 years and with an option of 10 more years. And so we believe that they will be working near to maximum capacity for the duration of those years. There is a slight, like a 1% reduction, I think, every couple of years. But at the end of the 35 years, the salvage value of the panels will still be pretty substantial, and they'll still be very much usable.
Is part of your agreement with the landlord removal of, at some point, if you decide, if the legislation changes or for some reason the project doesn't go, it stops, is there a removal?
There is a decommissioning plan as part of the application.
Yes, the law requires a decommissioning plan. Our own law requires it. He's got it in there.
That's all I've got.
Thank you. Mr. Pickett?
Yep, I thank you very much for this submission, read through it, and it was, to me, pretty complete as far as I could see. I was involved in making solar cells back in the 70s for satellites, and I've loved that. My key concern is the hiding buffer that goes around, and I remember you had that in there, and also the fencing. You've fenced all the way around, correct?
Correct.
Is that like a black fence or green fence or something?
Typically a chain link fence with
Chain link.
three strands of barbed wire at the top.
At the top.
Isn't that required by the federal government?
Yeah, the National Electrical Code
Right.
requires 7 feet fences for safety.
With the barbed wire, that's also required
Isn't
the
it
barbed
true
wire.
that barbed wire is not required if
Oh.
you go half a foot higher?
We are open to it. That's just been our typical fence option. I mean, it's a safety thing, and so we're trying to prevent anyone from getting into the facilities and, causing damage and hurting
I
themselves.
think there is a way around the barbed wire if the planning board doesn't like it, but if it's not visible, it may not be an issue.
Thank you.
Do your crossover 6-foot fence?
This is higher than 6
7.5,
foot, was it?
right?
Yeah, 7.5.
Because I hate to see them
Yeah,
caught in
that's-
barbed wire.
That's a big deal.
And I did notice in the aerials what looked to be some kind of pathways over both of those open parcels, which I'm guessing could be ATVs from time to time. So there may be people that are enjoying the site, and they might want us to
The area was also
try.
logged. So this was part of the original, one of the Rimp farms.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Yep.
So it has successive growth, hardwood forest in it, but nothing major, nothing significant old.
Liz?
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I was going to ask her what the height of, what a fence needs to be in order to stop a deer from jumping. Is it 8 feet? 7.5?
10 feet.
That's what I've seen in a lot of communities, is 8 feet.
So the barbed wire could be a danger to the animals.
I don't know, maybe you can address that in your next submission.
Yeah, typically we don't have much trouble with deer jumping over the fences, and also it's pretty common for us to have fences that have kind of slots at the bottom so any kind of animals, smaller animals, can get out of the project in case they accidentally get themselves into it. So
That's a nice idea.
we had recommendations. My parents are goat farmers, and there's talk of keeping the maintenance down with goats, but goats will hop on top of anything that's around. So we try to keep safety with the animals as much as possible. So not much.
Then I think we can revisit the fence discussion as we go further.
Okay. The other was just a question. The size of the panels, that's counted as impervious?
According to your solar law.
It's how the law
Really,
was
even
written.
though it's polled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Each community does it differently, and this community counts the panel.
Wow, okay.
And just to clarify that, also, the racking system it's pile drived into the ground, so there's no concrete. It could easily be removed just from being pulled out.
Thank you.
Ms. Dexter?
Not to beat the fence issue, but how high, if a fence is over 6 feet, do they need to get a variance?
No, that would be if it's on the property line. 6 foot is the maximum, but this is well within the property line.
Oh, okay. Okay. That was my first question. I'm also very excited about this project. I think it's great. I hope that, I don't know, the potential around here is huge. There's so many lovely farms that this could supplement, and they could have their goats feed under there. So I'm very excited about this. And I realize that your initial submission may change. So the site is fairly steep, and the way you showed on your site plan looked like the majority of the panels were on the north side of the slope. And I also noticed that the way you had them all lined up, it looked like they were facing east, because you showed the arrays like this, and that generally means that they're facing that way. They were facing east. And I realize all that could change, but I was just kind of curious that it looked like you were putting most of your panels on the north side of a steep hill, and this time of year, I'm not sure.
We actually have, John can talk about this, but we actually have an updated solar array that shows exactly what the updated locations of those solar panels are, if you would like to look at that.
I figured that what I saw was just probably very preliminary, and it was just kind of like, here's the area where the solar panels are. It was not like a final, here's how they're situated, here's how they're sited. But I was just thinking, between the buffers that you need to show, it may be a good thing to show both parcels, because there's that additional parcel is not as steep and seems to be actually more suited for this type of, so you might have more room to play with and still have all your setbacks and.
Okay.
So, but very excited. This is a great project.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliver?
Again, very exciting project. Thank you for considering bringing it to Hyde Park. I'm also interested to see how you move forward with the 2 parcels. I agree. I think it would be beneficial to show it and consider, looking at the first plan where you had it on both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Napoli?
What an interesting array of people that came before us tonight.
No pun intended.
All right.
This is a really interesting project, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition down the road. 2 things. One, I appreciate Ms. Paldoro's suggestion about the thinking of wildflowers. I think that's a great idea. I think that would be something that would be warmly received in this community. It would also cut down on the amount of mowing you would have to do.
Sure.
along the way.
Sounds great.
My other question, and I hate to belabor the question, the fence. Does it have to be a chain link fence by law, or is that more of a choice with incorporating the barbed wire?
The height is more according to a national electrical code to be standard and consistent with most projects. Chain link, but
Chain link is more of a choice.
it's a choice. I think it's just it's been a consistent choice with the projects we've done. So I mean, well, we're open to hearing other ideas on how you'd like the fence to look. You know, I'm assuming chain link has also a cost, and so you know, we're always looking at.
As you're going to be fencing it, I don't think you want to hear suggestions for fencing.
Okay, I take that back.
Please, let me, you're being very accommodating, and I like that, we all do, but let's not be too accommodating.
I hear you.
Yeah, no, I'd like to point out that when we talk about the required buffering that will, or the landscaping that would provide visual screening, that should also be providing screening to the chain link fence. I mean, the board is concerned with aesthetics, particularly in our community, because people weren't in the past. So we frown on, our code frowns on chain link fences, but this is a security fence, which under our code is actually allowed for security fencing. So, I mean, I know I don't want to see a big old ugly chain link fence either. Really, no, it looks like, you know, Stalag 17 with the barbed wire on top. And that's what we can, like I said, think on it, and we can give them more clarity as we go down the line. That's a minor site plan element for what you're overall proposing.
Yeah, and it's very typical we'll have visual renderings or visual simulations before and after along the public road.
That would
That's
be
pretty
most
common.
helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. And in the last comment, and I understand this is all very new and it's a moving target, but to spend a little bit more time looking at that second parcel, because it really does seem that that might be the better placement in time.
The second parcel, the southern parcel, even
Yeah.
even though it's currently zoned.
Neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I also did advise Mr. Baxter that once it's been rezoned, he would lose density. The residential density in neighborhood is far more substantial than Greenbelt. So again, as I explained to him as diplomatically as I could, that's up to him as the property owner. It's also up to you, I believe, as contractees with him. I don't know what your contract states at all. So, but I would urge you to contact him so you can resolve. Again, if that's how this goes, then as Ms. Polidoro said, we would do seeker on the rezone as well, I take it. I think that the town board would let us, because the rezone would be integral to this action that's proposed. So it would not necessarily, if it was you that I emailed to, I don't remember, my apologies. The first question.
Tom McElwain.
That's right, it was Mr. McElwain.
Yeah.
So the first question was whether a use variance could be obtained. And, you know, as Ms. Whitman replied, that was above her pay grade, but so I replied. But in general, we don't recommend use variances, and we're required to for the ZBA, because it's essentially a rezoning, and we feel as though that's for the electeds rather than the appointeds to figure out. And they've been only, I believe, 2 granted since we got the original zoning, rather than just subdivision law. But you know, there's spot rezoning, which is illegal, but it's much more defensible when you have adjacent parcels and, again, mitigating factors, such as the fact that even though it's a neighborhood, it looks down to something where you probably don't want houses looking down on a big construction site that has big equipment, et cetera, and it's noisy all day long. So, like I said, the supervisor seemed to think that it would entertain the notion, and it could be done, like I said, simultaneously, but it does add some bit of delay into it, and you seem to be wanting to move forward quickly because you were already asking us to declare lead agency tonight. So I think I know where your discussion might be going with the owner.
Yeah, we'll continue talking with the owner, but my primary role is to make sure that the project is code compliant, and so we made sure that the project could be feasible within the code as best we could.
If only we had all applicants who had someone who ensured that it was code compliant. Gee. Again, I want to thank you for your detailed narrative. I think that once you respond to Ms. Axelson's and Mr. Sotero's, I should say, joint memo, then we can move forward with declaring for lead agency and get this thing started. Also, I'll weigh in, too, that I think that, of course, doing a flowering meadow instead of just conventional grass mix is a better idea. I know there'd be, Ms. Moss, our zoning administrator, is a landscape architect. I'm a former master gardener, New York State master gardener. We're both able and willing to help you if you need to know some plants that won't grow too tall, that will flower and attract, but won't grow too tall to prevent full absorption. I had 2 questions. One, I was going to bring it up. What happens when it snows? What do you actually do? I mean, if we have a really, does someone go out there and dust off, or do you just wait for the heat to? I mean, I don't know the answer to that one.
No, we don't have someone that just brushes
I
off.
didn't think so, but.
No, typically, the panels, they don't get hot. They are always, you can always touch them, but there's
not heat, they don't reflect back.
Well, there is a little bit of a residual warmth that will allow the snow to just slide right off. Yeah.
Okay.
That's typically what happens.
And if it's a light enough snow, and you have snow on the back, it actually can generate quite a bit of electricity. Because it has a dual effect. It's reflected off the ground.
And there you are. See, I knew someone.
Okay, so.
The backside of it absorbs that too?
So now you have the reflective all around it, along
Wow,
with the sun.
okay. And then the second one's really not a question, it's just a comment. Mr. Raplansky sent, the town attorney sent a letter to someone, actually, I guess I can tell you who, Mr. Broder. It
Yes.
wouldn't be up to you, it's just to make sure that you start that process as well, because I don't want that to be a condition that holds you up for forever before you get a building permit.
Sure. What was his name again? The attorney?
The attorney is Warren Raplansky.
Okay.
R-E-P-L-A-N-S-K-Y. Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N. He's a town attorney. This was addressed to, as I said, Mr. Benjamin Broder. The date was January 29th, 2018. It was in reference to a pilot. It's also within the law. I'm sure, you may not know what's going on, but I just want to make sure you understand that we'd have to make that a condition if it's not already, established.
Yeah, Ben Broder. He lives in Saratoga. He's one of our, he's on our team of economic community development specialists. So he tends to talk to assessors, but he can also talk to town attorneys.
Actually, in the letter, he urges, I believe, Mr. Broder to talk to him and then with the assessor.
Okay.
So if that process is getting started, then it'll make this go faster. And I also want to thank you for doing this in our town. As I said at the very beginning, you're the first application for this law. I don't know if you guys were present when the law was being drafted, but I came to numerous public hearings for it, and there were all sorts of representatives of companies just like yours who were weighing in and asking for this language, that language, et cetera. There was an attorney who I was ready to strangle by the end because he was supposed to represent an applicant. He kept coming in at the last moment saying, what about this, what about this? I'm like, we're not going to pass the law if you keep doing this. Yeah. So we did finally get it passed, but it's taken a while for someone to come forth, and I think this is a great use for this site. It's the other thing I'll add is that I want to make sure that we're all aware that this requires, as I said, screening. And having walked the site with Mr. Baxter before, I believe a lot of the trees that are proposed are deciduous. So I'm not sure how much would be visible in leaf-off seasons. But the site is elevated. You'd have to kind of elevate yourself up, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, to go up to see all of it. But we should be aware that they're mostly deciduous. I believe, and maybe you could address this in the future, that there's enough depth in what you're proposing to leave forested, I'll say, or treed, that it might be really difficult still to see through all the trunks. But again, there's been a lot. The last time I walked, it was before all the logging was done, so we might want to do a site walk. Would we contact you to do that, or?
Sure. Yeah. I'll be part of that site walk. But
I mean, I know Mr. Baxter's email by heart.
Yeah.
He's a constant caller, and emailer and texter. But does Cynthia have your particular email? I know we have.
I have my card I'll hand out.
Thank you. If you can just make sure that, so I'll try to set up a site walk for everybody, and you can kind of take us around where the solar arrays would be, the ground-mounted arrays would be. Okay. We can therefore have an idea of what amount of trees will be left. Great. I think that would resolve that like that.
Great.
Any other questions you have for us?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So on the EAF, this did not come up in a check zone for endangered or threatened species, but all that really means is that no one has reported
Mhm.
any of those species within this area. Because this is such a large area of disturbance, the board should consider whether a natural resources survey should be submitted, and if one's going to be done, springtime is the perfect time to do it.
I'll say, board, why don't you think on this, and then we'll can we put this as an item for discussion for the next meeting?
Mm-hmm.
And you can be present or not. You can also watch us. You can't watch us live unless you're here in Hyde Park watching on, but we're recorded it's put up on the website the next day on a
Okay.
Facebook page if you don't want to, I don't know where you're from, but if you don't want to travel so far.
Where's the camera?
They're all over.
Two back here.
You're on it.
And believe it or not, we actually
You're
have
on
a loyal and
candid
dedicated
camera.
following of residents around the town. This is not a joke. This is not a joke. I used to
tune
be,
in.
I'd be at the grocery store and they'd say, "Hey, Mr. Dupree, I saw you on TV," and I'd think, "What?" They mean the local access channel. But at any rate, we'll have this discussion so we can, I want to think about that, about the natural resources inventory. I mean, again, to point out, many of us up here have been through biodiversity assessment training, and because this has been so extensively logged, I feel as though it might be superfluous just because you had big equipment running everywhere. In our state, as you may or may not know, the DEC, silviculture, removal of trees, to create more healthy big trees is considered part of agricultural use, and therefore that often trumps endangered, threatened, and rare species. There's a balancing act that the DEC does, but our particular tree removal law, I'll call it, doesn't give a lot of leeway from time to time if the DEC says yes, just based on certain parameters. So that's why I said I think a site walk will help.
So you
Maybe
wanna
we can
have the
schedule that as
discussion
quickly
after the site
possible.
walk?
That's what I'd like to do. So if you leave your card, I'll be emailing you tomorrow to discuss a site walk. That
Sounds great.
And if we don't, Mr. Oliver may know, we're supposed to have either rain, snow, ice, something, so.
All
Your
the
guess
above?
is as good as mine.
If we-
They say ice and snow, but I don't see it happening. I don't know.
I'm kind of with you, so we'll try to schedule this as quickly as possible, sometime in the next 2 weeks, if that's okay with you guys.
Sounds great, yeah.
Okay. It was a pleasure meeting you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Do you fly in from California like the rest of the state?
He's local.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and you're not driving back tonight, I hope. Next time, we may try to change your location on the agenda to get you out earlier.
Thank
If
you.
No, if you tell me where you're coming from, we often do that for people coming from Westchester or wherever.
Right.
We're happy to
Thank
help
you.
you.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
The next item on the agenda is Associates Golf Car. The applicants are seeking site plan approval to build a new structure, which would be an office for their business. They also already store golf carts in the rear. Before we get started, just to apprise the board, this was proposed and given approval under the prior code.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes. However, the applicants did not meet all the conditions, one of which, and I'll discuss this further, I believe was DOT, let's see if I can get it, DOT approval for the alternate ingress right there.
Correct.
So as a consequence, the approval lapsed. However, no one ever went after them to enforce as a violation. So Ms. Moss is more or less considering this as, since it's been there all this time, even though it exceeds scale allowed is 7,500 square feet, this is sort of their base because it did receive an approval. It's just that it didn't make all the conditions, so the approval lapsed. But it's been utilized all this time as a single-family residence where the office building will go. But in the back, it's been holding all of this, plus other things. It's been used by Mr. Gleason, I believe, too. So we asked the applicant, when Tad and I met with them a couple of times offline, to try to calculate as much of the use to come up with a baseline scale as they can, and Mr. Day has done that, so.
Well, I think we're done here. I mean, good evening, Mark Day, Day Engineering. With me this evening is Anne Marie Van Etten, Golf Cart Annie. They've operated this site, it's 12 and a half acres. This?
Yes, thank
Really?
you.
Okay. I'm here tonight to represent Associated Golf Carts. This site is 12.5 acres. It's on Route 9G. It's on the eastern side of 9G, near Dunkin' Donuts. If you don't know where it is. They've been operating on the site since 2002, as Mr. Dupree had mentioned. It was existing non-conforming to the best of my knowledge. We got involved in a job last year at some time. We walked the site many times. I believe the board's been out there once, members of the board, sorry. I think you can agree with they've actually done a lot to clean the site up. A lot of this area was gravel. It is now kind of reverted back to grass, although you wouldn't, well, today you noticed, but you wouldn't have noticed. In the fall, we had a walkthrough, and you can see where the site was actually going back to grass, and that is the intent. There is an area in the center of the property where the golf carts are housed when they're in, let's say, on site. For the majority of the operation, a lot of golf carts are not at site. They rent, and they're generally not on the property. There is an existing single-family wood-frame residence. It's in fairly bad shape. We originally had shown the building on the south side, but because of the fact that you're entering the existing driveway, there's a little bit of a climb. We just felt this was not an appropriate spot for the building because of the fact that it's low. We just felt it would always be a drainage issue. So what we had prepared, or what we put together, was a plan that relocated the building further to the, let's say, the north side of the property, utilizing the same driveway with improvements, because right now it's just not wide enough, so we are going to widen it to 24 foot. We're proposing a 4,800 square foot building. We've played with some colors, played with some structure. This building is a pre-engineered building just because of economy. We are proposing, this will be the side that faces 9G. This is cultured stone going up the apex. This is going to be a, sorry, I didn't memorize the colors. This is maroon. So we're going to go with a galvalume or a gray roof. We're going to go with wooden gables, and basically we're going to hold like a black trim. That building is going to be about 2,800 square feet. Of it will be office space. The balance of it would be, sorry, I got that backwards, 1,900 square feet is office. The balance would be repair area for the golf carts. That area will be entered from the back. There are garage doors you see here. This is the rear elevation. This will not be seen from Route 9G. This side will be the south side. You'd see this if you were driving north on 9G. This is the north side. You won't see this. There's a considerable amount of vegetation, housing. There's a house here, so you won't see that. The site is generally going to remain the way it is. We are going to keep the corral, if you will, for the golf carts. This plan is what we call a master plan. We took a lot of the storage trailers and things like that were all around the site. We've actually shown them on the property. They're pretty much along with that. They've moved a lot of the sea containers and various things in the locations that we show here. There will be 2 tractor trailers on site because they do move these golf carts to certain areas. They will be stored here in the back. Some of you may be familiar. There's not a good view from Route 9G, so you don't have a visual of this back here. As you travel down 9G, there's quite a bit of an uphill. Mm-hmm. Once the building's there, it's going to be very difficult to see any of this in the back. Their intent is to just keep and operate this gravel driveway that goes around the corral and basically leave things the way they are. We have done a lighting plan, which we did include, and I don't know where it is, but it's in here. We have proposed landscaping which we met with the board on this a couple of weeks ago. We've proposed considerable amount of landscaping to offer a buffer to the south. So we are proposing a ground mount sign in the front of the area. As you can see, we're proposing a DOT entrance to meet the standards required by the DOT. And we will be making that application. We will also be making an application to the Board of Health once the weather dries up to resize the septic system for the new building.
Thank you. Anything else?
For that.
So just again, for the board's edification, I think that I've sent out, my head is spinning with how many memos I seem to be sending out, but I believe that I sent out a memo where there was an offline meeting where we discussed architecture and some of the elements about landscaping that were required. And that's what Mr. Day is referring to by saying he met with the board. Let me start with Ms. Axelson. You're our go-to person tonight since you haven't been here for a while.
Yeah. So I had a hard time finding where the vegetation was in front. That's what I was looking for. So we might need you to show, be more detailed. In other words, the landscaping plan ultimately is going to show us where is your existing vegetation that's going to stay. And in front of the building, like between the building and the road, what's there?
There are some trees now, but I think they're being removed.
Yeah, they're being removed. They're very tall pines. They're not of very good quality. Sorry.
I guess that would be the concern I would have, would be the view from the road of the building, because it's, kind of a big building.
So. We can have that tree back.
Yeah, I mean, actually, what we have showing trees that would remain, the trees that were in front were actually removed. We're showing, as I said, proposed landscaping. Pretty detailed, I want to say. There's a considerable amount of proposed landscaping.
But if you think,
but not in front.
If you think that they had originally proposed it here, and I said the required screening is between residential, i.e. there and here, and non-residential use is this. So they've screened out basically the big commercial use in the back by planting a series of evergreens in through here, so that this house has the visual buffering. There's no requirement from the street to here that there be buffering.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of softening the look of the building from the street.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, we could
not like a buffer, but maybe something.
A tree, something that would also help maybe cool it down in the summer.
Yeah.
Mr. Day didn't mention it, but also the current driveway kind of goes like this, and they're better aligning it with the roadway across the street now, which is what DOT will prefer. But we all should prefer a four-corner intersection, as opposed to those ones that we're supposed to avoid back in the day. At any rate, that's another improvement I think that he's making through there. But I think the board would take it under consideration to add a tree in the front.
Yeah, just something to soften up. And then there, what?
How about a golf cart?
There you go, with lights on it, with some lights on it.
Your sign could be
Christmas
a
lights.
golf cart that has.
That's right.
Yeah, I like
Put it up on a
rotating.
pole.
They're working on that right now.
Rotating lights, something on a
pedestal
gorilla.
and
Rotating.
With
little.
10
No,
inch
it's
letters.
okay. We needed it. So I'm guessing that the parcel access information that I got from the county isn't up to date, because you have this little parcel in between, and then you have a driveway coming out the other side?
Oh, actually, yeah, I believe you're right. This is an exception. This is an exclusion to this property. This property has frontage, both here in its main frontage. There's also a 50-foot access that does go there. This is a survey that was prepared by Marie Welch.
Right. So will you be using both driveways?
This driveway is existing. We are improving this driveway for the tractor-trailer use. I mean, they are using this now for tractor-trailer. They're also using this for tractor-trailer.
Gotcha.
Because of certain times, this actually has more visibility to a tractor-trailer
Does
than
have better
this.
visibility.
So they are using this now. The intent is to develop this as the main entrance.
Right, okay.
Am I right or wrong? Does this residence, does this use this entrance as well? Do they have a separate driveway here?
Does
It's the same driveway.
That's what I thought. So in other words, this is a shared driveway, both for this parcel. I mean, the Van Ettens own this parcel too. This little intervening parcel is owned by the Van Ettens as well. So, but that's what I thought. You'd come in now and park sort of right there, and the house is about there, if I remember correctly. Okay.
And just one thing you could maybe confirm for me, it looks like the site drains a certain way. I know you have a wetland sort of to the north of your pond, so it looks like the existing pond maybe acts as like some drainage comes in there, and
There is a pipe that actually comes from God knows where, out of the ground.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it comes and it crosses under. This was done when Mr. Gleason had access. He used this for a while, and the Van Eddens let him use it. He actually excavated his basin because this was a chronic flooding issue.
Yeah, I figured, yeah.
And it actually helped. So it dried the site out.
Yeah, because it looks like the wetland is off-site, but
Yeah,
to
over
the north
here.
of that.
Yep.
So,
Well, your building, Mark, I think is pretty much at the high point, right?
Yeah, we're right on the high point.
And it drains in
I mean,
the back.
minus this, because this
Yeah,
goes
right,
up
right,
to the
right.
site.
That's pretty steep, yeah.
But
back
this
there.
area is the high spot in the front.
So what's going to happen in the building versus in the corral? What will the corral be used for? and
The
what-
corral's still storage. It's still, you'll be storing, they'll be storing golf carts in that area.
Is that
when-
area flood?
No.
No, okay.
no,
No,
there's
no.
no floodplain.
Inside the new facility, they'll actually be able to maintain or repair or, service their vehicles. Right now, they have no place to service. They have to do it off-site.
Mhm.
So this will offer them the opportunity to be able to service the golf carts on site.
So why is it so tall?
Oh.
Right, because golf carts, I mean,
Oh,
do
we
the
could
golf
have
carts
made
go
it
on-
this tall.
How tall is the building? Because I
22
know.
feet. It's
Yeah,
18
it's
foot
not-
eve, 22 foot to the ridge.
Because you have to have the lifts that lifts up the
That's what
golf
we,
cars.
that's what we were trying to figure out. Is it so
Oh.
tall? Because when you look at it, the windows seem very low. So, but the window's the right height. I looked at it for what normal buildings are. So I figured that either you were doing tire racks like Mavis, that's why they had to have such a tall building, or that you were going to do lifts to do the repair.
Correct. There's lifts in the back.
Yeah.
The rear of the building, which is the majority of the site, only out of 4,800 square feet, there's 2,000 that's office. The back is where they would maintain the cars and have lifts and such.
And also store parts, so it's,
No, it makes sense. We were just curious as to why exactly. We had a similar building for Hyde Park, Rhinebeck Antiques Emporium, and they store up as they go, which is why they needed the extra height as well.
I think the confusion on the building height was that in your zoning table, the maximum height is 40 feet, but existing and proposed just says less than 40.
Right, at
So
the
when
time-
if you have an actual value, that would probably
Right.
relieve all of us. of
We got a
all that
comment
worry.
from Ms. Moss on it. We also responded that at the time, we did not have these elevations, but we knew it was going to be less than 40.
Right.
So will it be?
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
I'll
I'm
call on
sorry.
you. Let's just, we're all getting punchy now.
Yeah, and then just one more thing, it looked like there were land banked parking spaces or
Mhm.
something
We
like that?
do, yeah, we are
Okay.
proposing land bank.
Because you probably won't really need the ones that you're proposing that are going to be paved.
Correct. They don't have customer base that comes to this. Every once in a while, someone comes, but it's rare. It would only be for the one or two people that are on site.
we had one person today.
Are the land bank spaces included in all of your calculations?
Yes.
Mhm. I mean, I'd prefer to see them myself land banked.
Because, I mean, does it make more sense to waive the parking than to have it?
Wait, it's not a waive. Remember, our parking are guidelines
Right.
only. They're not
Right.
standard, so as a consequence.
So there's total of, I think, 16
16.
spaces, and I doubt that you'll even need 8.
No,
So
it
there's
doesn't
8 on
make-
one side.
It doesn't
think
make
eight,
sense.
8.
They're adjacent to the building, not paved. It's silly. So, just for maintenance of the site, we'd rather just pave it, leave the other ones banked and grass. So that's why we split it the way we split it.
Well, I mean, I was just asking if banking has more legal ramifications, which is that we need to have notes on the plans about when you can build it, et cetera. Does it make sense for the planning board to
Just to
perhaps
say,
modify the
this is
park
the
height
thing
to
is,
the site
our parking
altogether?
guidelines, the way it's calculated, it's based on size of the building plus total number of employees. The size of the building is large enough that it requires you to have more parking for it. But the specific use does not entail that many parking spaces. However, if we're thinking about planning for the future, what if they sell it and then need more parking spaces in the future because the size of the building is such that other people need it? I mean, I'd rather it be banked myself.
Okay.
But if you think it's simpler,
Well, as long as the land bank spaces are included in the calculations and we have a clear, clear language about who decides when those spaces have to be built and what the process is for building them once that decision is made.
okay,
Makes sense.
thank you.
Where would we get that verbiage?
Me.
Okay.
Don't worry, we'll provide it. Ms. Axelson, any other comments?
Right off the top of my head, no, I haven't looked at the EAF fully yet, so.
Okay. Mr. Sotero? You're quiet tonight.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty simple application. I'm sure there's going to be some comments on, you know, the building, so I don't want to take up. I mean, there's really not much from an engineering standpoint. I mean, it's a very small parking lot. Drainage, probably not going to be an issue. The State Department of Transportation will approve the access. Health Department's going to approve septic, so it's pretty like minor from an engineering standpoint.
Good to hear. I just want to emphasize Mr. Day didn't show it, but having walked the site, the grade does fall steeply back.
Correct.
Not steeply, but it falls pretty substantially
Yeah,
back here.
can't really
There's
see
an
it.
underground sort of storage bunker that you can access on one side right now and kind of walk out over soil on the top of it that I think is going to be retained. But overall, one of the reasons why Mr. Day kept saying you may be familiar with or may have seen it. I met you a long time ago with the pages or something, and you said, "Oh yeah, I store all these golf carts," and I had to go drive and go really slowly and find it. When the leaves are on, just where the trees are now, because of the drop down, you don't really see it. But if you go back there, when Mr. Day was saying it's really cleaned up, not the rest of the board has seen it. Ms. Moss showed me pictures. There were things kind of all over the place. So what they've done is they've corral or pin is the right term in this sense.
Yeah. Literally.
They've really moved everything to the center of the site, so it's been minimized so that there's not quite this all sprawling area out there. And yes, there's successive green growth, weeds, grass, something that's come back through there because they've removed a lot of the gravel, which is better for us for drainage to go right back into the ground rather than not. So, Ms. Polidoro, any additional comments?
I have one. The shared driveway, is there an easement for that?
So this parcel we're discussing tonight actually owns that, and the easement is to the 416 Violet Avenue. So they have the right-of-way. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Did I
there's
explain
an
that
easement.
correctly?
I'm just asking if it's written and recorded.
I believe when we bought the house, yes, there's
So if you
in
can
the
just give
deed.
us a copy, it would just be helpful.
Yep.
Because it should be referenced on the plan as well.
Right, because all
Thank you.
easements should be shown. Thank you. And can you send Mr. Day some language regarding the?
I'll have to talk to Tad.
Okay. We did this with the storage unit, I know. I think that might have been more loosey-goosey, but I know that we have bank parking shown there as well. So I believe Tad can give some guidance that way. So let me start back to my right. Let me vary things. Ms. Dexter, how about you? Surprise. You woke Thought you could have some time there.
Oh, my
huh?
goodness.
Well, I feel like I'm picking on Diana.
That's okay, that's okay. Yeah, so I'm glad that you've cleaned up the site and this is looking, I know that when I'm driving north on 9G, I know if you look back there, you can see.
You should be looking out your windshield because.
Oh, I know.
I'm looking at
She's a customer at that point. I mean, she's a passenger.
Yes, exactly. But I do know, some of the screening there is gonna be good off of 9G, just to have it. I don't have to say about the building, I guess I thought it was really tall also. I thought it was like, my comments were gonna be, why is it gotta be so tall? But if it's 20.
It's 18 feet, 22 feet here.
Okay.
The reason why is the lifts end about.
Right. No, I understand. So my comments that we're gonna say that it's way too tall, I can't say those anymore. My only other concern was that you do have a blank wall, but the way you explained it was that it's shielded by another house?
Yeah, sir. You all right?
Yep.
It's our night of coffee.
Because I don't know CPR.
I do.
Pass them down.
You want a cough drop?
She doesn't want to talk.
This is shaded by that existing house.
Right, that's right.
And there's also trees on this, excuse me, on this side, you know.
I was asked by a former planning board member to make sure that no more blank walls were put in Hyde Park, but I think that's when that's all you see is the blank wall.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see it. I mean, this is up pretty significant.
light
There's a very, this is a large hill. You'd never, with the
Plus,
house here, you'd never.
We have to put the fence between
True, that's right.
the buffer fence.
We are proposing.
I was just- I was-
With the
I was-
blank
Oh.
wall, does this meet light and ventilation requirements? I mean, the windows look.
In what way? You're talking building code?
Yes.
Yeah, it does for the, light and vent is, you can create artificial light and vent. Like, we don't need light and vent here, but we're artificially creating both light and vent.
I think the building code when
I
this was
think
built
the
was
building
far
code
different
actually
than now.
requires-
Yeah, light and vent's been pretty much 4%, 8%.
Okay.
So,
Okay, we just question it because it doesn't look like a lot of windows for such a big building, but again, the dimensions weren't on it, so.
yeah, but again, you gotta remember, light and vent can be provided artificially, either through HVAC or through lighting.
My office is going to be up front.
Yeah, we know where all the windows are.
Yeah.
You
My
want
brother
the
doesn't
light.
need windows.
He'll be back in the back with all the blind people.
the
with white
dungeon back
skin.
there,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So I don't have many more comments. I guess, what does jump out at me is that there isn't a lot of detail on it. I do like the use of stone. I guess maybe seeing some samples of that would be nice.
Sure, we can bring those in.
Um,
Yeah, this is
although-
gonna be a cultured stone, I don't know if I said that, maybe I did. This is gonna be a cultured stone here. This is gonna be a wood, gable end, and, these are gonna be panels and obviously windows, but we'll bring samples in.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
and I'm sure my colleagues will have other comments.
Sorry to have jumped on you, Mr.
That's quite all
Oliver.
right.
No, I agree that I'm happy to see you improving the site, and I actually like the building. Prefab building look. I think it'll suit your needs well, and thanks for, kind of dressing it up a little bit with the culture stone and the gable ends. I think that'll help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. DiNapoli?
Is it really my turn yet?
Yeah.
I have some concerns with regards to the building architecturally, particularly the roof line. It seems extremely short with really no overhangs around, which gives the impression like you ran out of money and you could only go that far with the roof. I mean, just aesthetically, to make it look more,
Well, like on the front, you think, like pull this out?
just, yeah,
Well, your
pull it
problem
out.
is here, I mean, I don't know, to me, when you start bringing soffits out and you have a gable, it kind of conflicts, but if you want, I mean, we can pull it out
No,
a foot.
but even on the other side, I mean, look, in the eastern side and even on the west side.
So you're saying pull these out?
And the overhang.
Out the
too.
front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to give it some, this is a big building, and it's not a huge building, but it is a substantial building.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of put things into proportions a little.
Okay, we're showing a foot. What do you think? A couple feet, 2 feet, 3 feet?
As much as I will make my comment that I think it should be pulled out to extend the overhang.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just have to play with it a little to see exactly what gives it a softer look and a more complete look.
So you're basically, you're referring to the gable
To-
end?
yeah, to the
So to
whole
the
roof
front,
line.
you wouldn't want it back here, correct? I mean, it's the back.
It,
Wait,
But in terms
I have
of
a question.
balance-
Wait. So I think what Mr. Day is asking is, do you want it to project a foot or two, a foot more this way, coming out three-dimensionally towards you? So, or, I'm sorry, yeah, this is the front.
This way?
Yes.
Or do you
Yeah.
also want it to do, this would just go
Well,
out
that's
this
the
way?
side view of that.
Do you also want it to
So
go
you
out
want-
longer this way too? Or just, in other words, just these two, just
Yeah,
this
pull
end?
these ends out?
Yeah, the two end,
Okay,
Off
so
the,
the
off the
gable-
peak?
The gables,
Off the
yes,
peak?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Like a, yeah.
Yeah,
You were
like,
thinking this was not my first language.
That's
and
okay.
I mean, we can
It's
pull this
architecture.
out, and that'll add a shadow,
Yeah.
obviously under here, but it'll look nice, so we can do 4 feet. I think that's the limit on a pre-engineered structure, is about 4 feet, if that works for you.
I think 4 might be a little steep.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like 3.
All right, 3.
That was in the right,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's do 3 feet.
3, yeah.
3 feet, you got it.
What's typical?
Well, this, 1 foot.
I was thinking 18 inches to 2 feet.
Yeah, this is a foot, so, I mean, generally, you can do an overhang, you can go out to about 4 feet, but then you start to get snow load.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
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 you don't want to, the point's not to be exaggerated, but just to soften the look
Okay. We'll
of
come
a
out,
prefab building.
sure, we'll come out 3 feet.
Two, 18 inches.
Why don't you decide what's gonna look best? Go back and maybe.
Because I don't want to come back again, I'd like to know what you guys think, so if
But
it's
the-
3 feet, I'll
but
give you 3
sometimes
The
feet.
board's not gonna, the board can't tell you.
You just said 3 feet.
Well, no, it's also,
It's
it's, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about the eaves on my house, and my house is taller than yours, and mine is only 2 feet.
2 feet.
Yeah, I think maybe
The
2.
expert
what's-
at the end
I
says
wouldn't go
2
more than
feet.
I think
2
2
feet
feet's
on
probably,
that.
yeah.
2 feet.
So it's added an extra foot. Okay, continue on.
Thank you. And I know there was the discussion about you're doing screening on the side and the
Yes.
landscaping around, but that you remove the trees from in front of
Right.
where the building will be.
Correct.
I guess I see this as a big building that is making a statement, and something to soften, some type of screening would be appreciated from the road from Route 9G.
We can handle it, we can landscape.
Because this is your entrance to the town, and you would like to make as nice and as finished product statement as you can.
My-
And it's warm and welcoming.
My only, we had discussed this, was you want the front to look really pretty, but then now you want me to cover it up. So,
I think a single tree won't cover much of it.
Oh, okay, yeah,
But
okay.
we're not talking like a forest or
oh,
screening.
gotcha, okay. Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to make big trees.
No, it's a landscaping element.
Just
It's just a
soften
landscaping
it,
element.
You know?
Yep, we can do
You
that.
know,
Or
Yeah,
what
that's
if-
e-
what
that's
if you do
definitely easy, yep.
foundation plantings instead of a tree, just to decorate the front of the building and keep the
It's
sight
certainly-
line to the building?
It's certainly up to you guys. I mean, I don't like foundation plantings myself. Actually, I hate foundation plantings because they grow tall, they cover up the windows, and they're covering up the cultured stone that they've added, myself. And if you're living inside a house, if you have foundation plantings, you don't really get to enjoy them. It's people from the street who do. So I like to have gardens out where I can see them myself, but that's just me. It's up to the rest of the board. When we call people, we can ask.
Yeah.
The other thing is we can't do too close to the road, because then the sight distance, right, yeah.
Drops right off.
Well, I'm thinking just one tree.
Yeah.
That would be a nice shade tree that would provide, ultimately to reduce your heating cost,
Is it just
cooling costs.
cut?
Yeah.
And I think
But that's easy to do, I'm all for that.
Okay.
So inside, you have 1,900 square feet for the office, and you have almost 2,000,
28,
3,000.
yeah, almost
28
3,000.
for- How high up do these lifts go?
Well, they go
I
up,
have no
the
idea.
man usually gets under it, so you're,
Mhm.
7 feet, or, so you can work under it, and then you got the cart itself, so, they tap out at probably about 12 to
10,
14
12,
feet.
so-
Because the golf car with the top on it is about 6.5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it's a lifted golf car, then it could even be like 8 feet, and then you have to lift it up so you can get underneath it, so.
And please excuse my ignorance, because I don't know about repairs. Do you have to take special precautions when you're repairing in terms of the flooring? Can it be just concrete or?
Just concrete,
wood
right?
thing? That's it?
Yeah, it'll be a
That's what-
concrete floor, more than likely epoxy finish on the floor.
Okay, and I think those are all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Pickett, let me pick on you next.
Don't have much of a comment. I'll go for the single tree and an 18 to 2 foot, 18 inch, 2 foot overhang.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I like it very much.
I'll go for the.
I'm voting.
I'll take door number 2. Okay, thank you. Mr. Murphy.
I'm gonna go on a little bit different topic. Aren't all those, like the corral and everything, is on fill? They're all filled?
This area here, you're saying?
Well, where the corral is and
Oh, in the back, the
in the
corral.
back?
Well, I don't think it's fill, it's,
Yeah, there was a lot of fill.
There
that
was a lot of
brought
fill
in.
put in there years
Was
ago
it?
without much,
Yeah.
Before.
much concern in it. What it did was push a lot of water over to Berkshire Avenue. And I don't usually disagree with Pete, but I think we ought to take a look at the drainage.
I didn't say anything yet.
Yeah, well, you said simple, and that scares me.
Oh, that comment. I
Yeah, that scared me when you said simple.
Okay, well,
I want to
I don't
see
wanna scare you.
if we can, if there's a water issue.
There's not now.
Well, there was a few years ago, so I'm assuming it hasn't corrected itself. Not there, but further on down the line.
Yeah, but there's nothing we're gonna be doing. We're actually removing an existing house. There is existing pavement here. I mean, I can quantify how much.
No, I understand I'm talking about the back of the site.
There's.
Yeah, in that area there, yeah.
But there's nothing we're doing here. We're not.
No, we understand that, Mark. Chan is just saying that he thinks that back when the site was filled, and the site was filled once, when Tom Gleason was working on the Greenbush Water District, he had the contract to install, the water lines, so any excess, material that came out of the trench was brought here. So, I do vaguely remember we had some drainage concerns from Berkshire Avenue and along 9G, but.
Let's go out and take a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. I just want to take a look at it,
but
see
I
if
don't
there's an economical way to solve it.
So I'm going to be the applicant's friend tonight. I've walked the site extensively. There's piles of fill back in through here, I believe. Am I correct?
Correct.
There's piles of fill back in through here. This golf corral is not sitting on fill. This was already here when the Greenbush Water District was going through. This has been here for a long time. This is where they put the fill back in through here. And the drainage, this is a man-made wetland. This is a totally man-made water body, trust me. When you go back there, it's a real, in the south we'd call it a pond, because it's pretty deep. So, tank, exactly right. I'm losing my southern accent now, it's too late. So, the water now really does flow right over to that pond, and I think that stays filled all year long, doesn't it? Yeah, because it's kind of, with the uphill you have, it goes down with the
I
bottom.
think there's a very,
Steep slopes back
low
there.
water
This
table
just
there.
drains right down. Now, yeah, so is it the ideal solution? I don't know, but it's already there.
Right.
So, do take a look at it.
Yeah,
but-
we have, and again, we haven't had it's been years since we had any, report issue. There was, there was a problem, but it was, I believe there was something going on up to the psychiatric center because there was a problem with a lot of, there was a
tank
problem.
leaking.
Was that, okay, well, that would be it. There was a problem behind where the nail place is, a little up by, the vacuum.
the vacuum
repair
cleaner place.
Whatever it is. There was a problem there, and I think we traced it back to, there was something going on up to, the psych center, and maybe that was that.
Oh, I do remember
But
the
we'll-
problem. Bunny and Stu talked about it, the owners of the
Yeah, there
SNS
was a
line.
bad flooding problem there,
Yeah,
but there was
yeah.
something that was going on up to the psychiatric
Yeah.
center. But that's fine, we'll
Just take a
we'll
look.
look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to point out that, again, the fill is still in piles in the site back there. And there's actually, it's been there long enough to fill that there's
Growing.
vegetation growing out of the steep slope of the fill too, so. Anyway, if you take a site walk, you'll be able to, I think, see that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Those are good
You're going to
comments.
close down Taft Avenue, or you're going to?
Yeah, my dad will sell that building.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a big step up from there.
Exactly. We're a little
This is a
cramped
much
right
better-
now.
Yeah, I drove by their office and when she said it's cramped, you can see
Oh,
inside.
Oh, yeah, no, we used to go in there a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely
No, I'm
cramped.
happy for you, and I hope
Thank
everything
you.
works out.
Ms. Weiser?
So I think this is a vast improvement from the first iteration. It's really looking lovely. I appreciate that you used the arts and crafts style of architecture here. And just because, and I know this may not be possible, but because there's such a vast space of nothingness here, if it's remotely possible to continue the feeling of the arts and crafts.
So, I'm sorry, here?
Yeah,
Okay.
on the, yeah, sort of like to consider differentiating. It's just, again, I'll send you this picture.
Okay.
Because this is a really good, nice little arts and crafts house.
I mean, we could bump this out and create a gable.
It'd be nice just to get a little bit of more architectural detail up here. And then, because I think it's a really charming look.
Okay.
On the south elevation, again, just a suggestion, I would consider another window here for,
Okay.
just for symmetry.
Yep.
And again, if you, more the eave type decorative trusses could be nice.
Okay.
Then on this one, nothing. And I only think windows here just because people are there, and natural light really
Okay.
helps people. And I was just thinking, you know, it's not about breaking it up, and I know that maybe the code doesn't say you need it, but people really like a lot of natural light and makes them work better. So we had windows.
Okay.
That's it.
I have an idea for that.
So, Ms. Weiser, I like what you just proposed much better than what I was going to say. I also, this has been bugging me. I do like the craftsman style columns that you've done. I like all of that.
Mhm.
And I know Ms. Moss was at first like, this is a fake entrance. Why are we doing this? It's because it relieves it.
Yeah.
It really does.
It
I
does.
like it. I like the fact that you now have a double version of it. It's that area up here that was getting me. And I was going to propose like round vents, which I don't think match that style, but something that could be just a fake thing to stick on there because it's that. I think that's what makes all of us think the building looks so big is because the windows are low and then there's that huge expanse area. And just for the side that's facing 9G to have another element there, I
Yeah,
think
we could do this. Sure.
would make a huge
Right.
difference.
Okay.
Just like humongous to me. And I also like the idea of adding a window or something over on this side, I have to say. And
Oh,
symmetry
okay.
would be better there too.
Okay.
I'm looking, thinking, this is, so your office is here, but then you wouldn't have any windows on the south side. And your brother in the dungeon gets 2 windows on the south side, but none on the east and none on the north. It's a mushroom. No, it's just, I think adding even just a couple of windows here would then, again, just give you natural light, which does make people happier, you're right, more productive. My other comments are really, will there be a generator anywhere?
No, not planning.
And
Like in case the power went out? We don't have one now.
I just wanted you to know that under our code, a generator is a structure, so it has to be shown on a site plan now. That's give you a heads up. Also, your HVAC, is there going to be anything external?
No, it'll be internal.
Good for you.
I mean, the only thing we may have is a condenser, but I would assume it'd be back here.
Fine.
So.
No, fine.
Yeah, it wouldn't be anything on the sides.
The other thing, I was going to also, I said add round vents or something, but I like Ann's idea, and I also suggest, in my head, I thought it'd be nice to extend the roof overhang. You did kind of throw me. You said how far, because I don't really know either. So, but it's good hearing from our colleagues. No, it's good to hear from my colleagues, and then when I started thinking about it more, I thought, wait, what is mine on my house? And my house is taller than this, so, and I know mine is 2 feet, because I remember at the time thinking that seems dinky, but then when I'm standing underneath it, if it's raining, it seems dinky. But when I'm looking at it from the road, it seems just the right size, so, to the house and scale.
We can do that.
So, I think we're,
I have one
yes,
more question.
yes.
Are the golf carts all electric, or will they, do you have gas powered or diesel?
No diesel. They do make diesel, but we just sell those. They're like half and half. Half electric, half gas.
So do you have a place on the property where you fill the golf carts with gas, or you can have a gas tank?
Well, we have a charging station for the electric, and what did we propose with the,
You were gonna put in a small 500 gallon tank, something below the bulk storage permit requirements.
Okay, is that shown on the
You
plan?
need to show
No.
that, then where that's gonna be.
But I think we were talking, we're gonna either do it off-site or,
500.
yeah, right now, currently, if you rent a golf car, you're responsible to make sure it has the gas in it and electric. So we're not really required to use a lot of gas, and if they do, they just fill it up like at a gas station on the way. So,
it's not done here. We don't fill up, we don't store. They had a tank that was removed, because they weren't using it. That was in the back. On a pre-existing, there was one here which they removed.
Oh, right, Ms. Moss, yeah, I remember we discussed this
So
at the
you're not
sidewalk.
putting in a new filling station?
We're not planning on it. At the last go-around, we were saying, no, it would be the responsibility of the person that rents it, or if they did do it, they would do it off-site when they're transferring it to their person that's renting it.
Okay, so we'll probably just want a note on the plan saying
Okay.
that there will not be a filling
Yeah, and if we did, we'd
If one's
come back to the
proposed, a site
board.
plan amendment, yes. Okay. Then, I think that I believe that if you can make the changes to the architecture and the landscaping, then at the next iteration, we'll be ready to type the action and circulate for lead agency. This has to go to county for DC planning and to DOT, but we'll figure out how to type the action, but it's
How big, the building's bigger than 4,500 square feet?
4,800, so it just, that's what I say, it
Not
falls,
type two.
it falls within the threshold of having to, okay.
And I don't, you know,
We should, we can get a comment.
Because you're erecting a building that's larger than, I'm sorry, yes, they need a variance from the ZBA because the building that they're proposing is larger than the structure that they're demolishing. So you need.
I thought it was about scale.
yeah,
Maybe-
you exceed scale.
Yeah, so,
Well, that's what I'm talking about,
Oh,
it's you're going above it, yes.
so I'm not certain of the process. Do we go there next, or?
You can apply there.
Okay.
The planning board will circulate for lead agency.
And we'll include the ZBA.
The zoning board won't be able to grant or deny until seeker is completed.
With this board?
Correct.
Okay.
But you can start the process because they only meet once a month.
Okay.
And so it makes sense for you to get on their agenda so they can set a public hearing while this board is reviewing the environmental impacts.
Okay, we'll do that.
And I'll add that they usually seek a recommendation. I think I can already tell where the board would go in that recommendation based on comments tonight.
Thank you.
So I can get that prepared in advance. And the ZBA, they meet, once a month, so it takes a little longer to go through that process. But that gives us ample time to conclude seeker therein. And I want to point out to everyone that even though there may be a little bit additional, there's not really going to be any additional traffic whatsoever. They already have the golf carts there. They're already utilizing the site in this same fashion. And there'll be somebody going to work every day back and forth, you and your brother, but there's already somebody living there was somebody living there for a while. You, at one point.
I lived there for 10 years.
Yes. In other words, the impacts are minimal. I do think that when we circulate this to DOT, and I said, Mr. Day, I think that you're going to probably get comments from DOT about this.
Yep. Okay.
I'm just anticipating it because they tend to, having worked with them for a long time now, they tend to go back and go, wait a minute, where? So you may get comments at that point then, but it's been used for so long, I don't think that's going to be a big deal, but that'll be it. So as soon as you get the plans ready, small revisions here and there, then we
Okay.
can make it. And I want to also weigh in, I think a tree in the front is nice. I think it's a good bang for the buck. Otherwise, we should be ready to go as soon as you are ready to submit.
Okay,
We're going to probably get our comments out the end of this week.
Okay. And also, the ZBA, they meet in a week, and their submission would have been
Yeah.
a week back.
Yeah.
So if you can get that going, then, again, we'll be able to conclude seeker in time for them to take the review. And
Very good.
it's a protocol between the ZBA and the planning board, since you've been doing more work in the town. And anytime that we start the review and they're involved, we do the seeker on it.
Okay. Very
All
well.
righty? Thanks so much for your time.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Whew. Last but not least,
Patient.
Quick Solar.
Quick isn't the word.
Patient solar, I think. they're
Patient
called.
solar, I guess we could say. So, Mr. Quick is proposing a ground-mounted solar project for his residence at 5 Phillips Drive. He is also going to need a variance, it's an area variance for disturbance within 100 foot of a stream from the center line. Having seen the site, we actually, we had this application, or we had, Mr. Quick was part of an application.
For the pond, for the dam.
You got it! You remember?
Oh,
Yes,
that one.
yes. So this is entirely in a neighborhood that the area around the stream is totally disturbed. If there's wildlife walking along it as a corridor, it's maybe skunks and deer. So if I'm required to write a recommendation from the planning board for this, I would hope that we would make a recommendation positively. When we met with the applicant initially offline, we told them basically our code requires screening, so they proposed screening around the site, and that would be to make it not so visible from Phillips Drive itself. But otherwise, there weren't too many issues on it. So we prepared the representative from the solar company, this is one where Ms. Dexter used to work, has to drive pretty far, and he's got a brand-new baby. like someone else, and so we suggested that he not have to come. That if there were questions from the board or consultants, that I would try to handle them and get back to them or get back to him on them. If you had a chance to review the project, does anybody have any questions on it?
Do you want any trees need to come down? My only question is whether any trees need to come down.
No, and Mr. Quick is actually a really skilled vegetable gardener. He does edibles rather than botanicals. So the site already had some, yep, you got it. So he's going to lose some of his vegetable area. Otherwise, if you look at the aerial, there's plenty of evergreens around it. It's just the view from Phillips to the site, and they proposed, I believe, forsythia is what we suggested, because that'll become a thicket pretty quickly, so if it didn't leaf off, you won't see it so much. In addition, we discussed with the solar representative the fact that a lot of people believe that there's a ground-mounted solar array that's on 9G in front of a farm, that that's an older version of what they do now. Now, the gentleman who proposed that wanted to make a statement that we should learn to love those kinds of solar mounts because it's, providing good energy. But a lot of residents I heard from at the time when they were passing the solar law were like, we don't want to see those things, right up on 9 or 9G. This is substantially lower. It doesn't have the big cement pilings that one does because it was older technology, I guess, or older style when they put it in. This is going to be driven down into the ground as well. So again, as far as I can see, adding the forsythia is all we need to do. So we prepared a resolution. Ms. Polidor prepared a resolution, typing it and referring to county planning. That's the only thing we have to do for this because there is no seeker on it. It's an exempt action, but it's within 500 feet of a county road.
Yes.
Ms. Polidor researched correctly. Who has this resolution?
I do. Solutions classifying the action and referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development. February 21st, 2018, resolution number 2018-06. Whereas. Now therefore, it be it resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the project as a type 2 action under seeker. 2, directs its secretary to refer the application materials to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for a report and recommendation thereon pursuant section 239-M of the General Municipal Law.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is,
Did we set the public hearing?
let's make it a motion to set the public hearing for March 7th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for pointing that out. I think I'm getting spacey now. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes for December 20th, January 3rd, January 17th, and February 6th?
Absolutely.
It was a lot of
I can't
good
vote
reading.
on the last three.
May I get a motion to approve the minutes for December 20th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I get a motion to approve the minutes for January 3rd with Chris abstaining?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I get a motion to approve the minutes of January 17th, again with Chris abstaining?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And may I get a motion to approve the meetings of the special planning board meeting held on February 6th? I will be abstaining, as will Chris.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. May I get a motion? Oh, wait. Here.
Release
Got
escrow.
2 more?
This is resolution 18-B. I will propose it. This is to release escrow for Hudson Valley Federal Credit Union and Rogers and McKenzie Lands of. Mr. Pickett seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And may I will introduce this. Oh, you know what? Apparently we did a motion to reappoint Morris Associates just for January, February, but usually we try to do this by resolution. I guess I must have been lazy and not written them last time. But I did write one this time. We only extended you till February. So resolution to appoint Morris Associates as engineering planning consultants for the month of March 2018, February 21st, 2018, resolution 18-C. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved, the planning board hereby appoints Morris Associates to continue as engineering planning consultants from March 1st to March 31st.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your forbearance. Time's a long meeting.
I think you nailed it. It was a very interesting, there was a wide variety.
I intended on going to discussion.